My wife cheated and asked for an open marriage. Here's how I turned the tables and got my revenge. Jeff, I'm not happy. I want a divorce. Although Jeff was taken aback, he wasn't entirely caught off guard. They'd been married nearly 20 years. But Darlene had been confiding in her friend and self-proclaimed marriage expert Miranda a lot lately. Miranda's expertise stemmed from her own 3 divorces. Jeff, are you listening? I want a divorce. Yes, Darlene, I heard you, but this is a serious matter, and I don't want to rush my response. I believe I've been a loving and dedicated husband and a good father. You haven't mentioned any issues in our bed life, so I'm in the dark about what's gone wrong. However, after hearing your words, my stance is that I can't bear the thought of your happiness being compromised by our marriage. Though it hurts, I'll stand by you in this divorce, but I need to know, is this a recent issue or has it been brewing for a while? Darlene responded, yes, gradually. I need some space, some time to explore other opportunities, meet new people. As far as I know, the court mandates that we be legally separated within 90 days of signing the papers. Maybe down the line, I might change my mind and want to remain married. We might not need to go through with a divorce. Jeff pondered. That's similar to what I've heard from others going through divorces. During the 90-day separation period, we're both free to date other people without it being considered cheating. But ultimately, we both need to agree to halt the divorce. However, either of us can proceed with the divorce without the other's consent. Jeff realized that Darlene didn't grasp that he had the same freedom as she did. I thought that if I filed the paperwork first, it would be up to me whether to continue the marriage or proceed with the divorce. Darlene hesitated. Jeff objected. I don't think that's fair, but just to be clear, I'll also file so that we're on equal footing. Does that sound reasonable? Darlene stuttered. I suppose. Are you suggesting that you want a divorce? It seems I mistakenly believed I was fulfilling the role of a suitable husband, father, and partner. No, I'm not seeking a divorce, but I won't obstruct your future, darling. I never implied you were inadequate. You've been a remarkable husband, father, and partner. I simply desire new experiences to spend time with others. It might bring me some fulfillment. I just need some space. Legal separation will grant me that freedom. Darlene, the fact that you require more than I can provide highlights my shortcomings, Jeff said. He fell silent briefly before continuing. Have you already consulted a lawyer and completed the paperwork? She brushed off his comment about feeling inadequate. No, I haven't obtained the documents yet. I intend to hire Junior Lewis. He handled Miranda's divorces. Thus, Darlene confirmed the influence of Miranda in seeking more from their marriage. Well, I'll likely enlist my cousin Sally to handle my side of the divorce. Sally, a real nightmare dare. I know you're not fond of Sally, but she's genuinely kind-hearted. Her tough reputation comes from her profession. She fiercely advocates for her clients regardless of gender. Interestingly, after the last family gathering, probably due to a few too many drinks, Sally offered to represent me for free if I ever needed a divorce lawyer. Wow, Jeff continued. We need to discuss something. I suggest you use the next 2 weeks to prepare for your divorce. That way we can start our separation on the 1st of the month. Okay, that works, but I'm not sure why we need to do anything before the separation period ends, Darlene replied. Jeff clarified. Well, I suppose the purpose of the separation is to experience what life might be like after divorce to help us decide if it's what we truly want. So this separation period should serve as a sort of trial for post-divorce life. Otherwise, we might not gain any clarity until the divorce itself, which could be messy. Does that make sense to you? Maybe I hadn't really thought about it. Darlene's resolve began to waver. How about this? Let's head to the kitchen, grab a notepad, and start outlining everything we need to do. I'll brew some coffee, Jeff suggested. With those words, he left the bed and headed to the kitchen, leaving Darlene to ponder. When Darlene arrived in the kitchen, the coffee was already boiling, and Jeff was jotting down notes. All right, Jeff resumed. There's so much to consider, it's hard to know where to begin. I think we should start with discussing the children. What do you mean? Darlene inquired. Well, we need to explain the situation to them, ensuring we both communicate the same message and reassure them that our divorce isn't their fault, Jeff explained. Darlene expressed her concern about breaking the news to their daughters, suggesting that they might not take it well and questioning the need to tell them so soon. She proposed waiting out the 90 days and possibly avoiding telling them altogether. Jeff countered, suggesting that they needed a plan for addressing their daughter's inevitable questions about the separation. He proposed that Darlene continue living in the house during the separation, allowing them to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the children while still spending time together occasionally. However, Darlene remained unconvinced, pointing out potential pitfalls in their plan. She highlighted the challenges of synchronizing their social lives and the risk of one person feeling resentful if the other wasn't on. bored with going out. She also emphasized the importance of experiencing post-divorce life authentically and the potential impact on their children if they were to see them socializing with other people. They discussed the need to inform not only their daughters but also extended family and friends to avoid suspicion of infidelity. They acknowledged the risk of their children blaming themselves despite reassurances, stressing the importance of consistency in messaging and expressing love. They recognized the potential need for professional counseling, but remained hopeful that their resilient children would adapt. Jeff mentioned the possibility of their children gaining additional grandparents from their new partners, which could mean more gifts for special occasions. However, they acknowledged the need for careful coordination of events like birthdays and holidays. Jeff also pointed out the importance of discretion regarding their romantic relationships, suggesting that meeting partners elsewhere would be more appropriate than bringing them home while the other parent was present with the children. They discussed the financial implications of maintaining two separate households, acknowledging that this would increase their expenses. Jeff explained that they would each need to adjust to managing and covering all expenses independently. He mentioned the common practice of dividing joint assets evenly in divorce cases, which would entail closing joint accounts and establishing child support arrangements. Understood, there's so much to address before the first day arrives. Darlene sat there in shock, uncertain of what to say. Jeff continued, I'll look into renting an apartment closer to my workplace so the girls will have a bed when they stay over on the nights I have visitation. The standard visitation schedule in most divorces allows the non-resident parent to see the children every weekend and every other major holiday, unless otherwise agreed upon by the resident parent. Darlene expressed her surprise that Jeff wasn't dating more frequently, noting how much both he and their daughters enjoyed their time together amidst their various activities. Jeff assured her that he would remain involved in their lives as much as possible, but emphasized that Darlene and her partner should be prepared to take on some of the responsibilities he currently handles. He mentioned the potential challenges of weeknight visits due to school commitments. He also discussed the possibility of assisting a new partner's children with homework and activities, suggesting that Darlene might need to help her new husband with his children as well. Jeff highlighted logistical challenges such as managing belongings in two locations and transportation issues, particularly if he doesn't live on a bus route for their school, which could disrupt their routine. This isn't unfolding as Miranda assured, Darlene mused. She said my husband would relent at the mention of divorce, offering to maintain everything he did for the family while allowing me to date others on the side. I'm losing control of the situation rapidly. Jeff, I'm stunned. I need to get some rest. We'll reconvene. Tomorrow. I'm going back to bed, you continue. Sorry, honey, but I need to jot down something else before I turn in. You know how my mind operates. The more groundwork we lay before the first day, the more at ease we'll be. Good night, dear. Darlene barely slept. She needed to speak to Miranda and update her on Jeff's unexpected response. Miranda would know the next steps. This assurance allowed her to eventually drift off. She woke up to begin her day and immediately noticed Jeff wasn't in bed with her. Oh my God, this fool stayed up all night working on the divorce checklist. But upon entering the kitchen, Jeff wasn't there, just a notepad on the table. Darlene peered into the guest bedroom to find her husband sound asleep. Returning to the kitchen, she began her breakfast. As everything cooked, she glanced at her notepad, listing items under the heading, Liabilities to Change. This encompassed tasks like adjusting the mortgage, homeowner's insurance, utilities, gas, water, electric, cable, cell phone plan, garbage service, internet security, car payment, car insurance, health insurance, dental insurance, Amazon Prime, LifeLock membership, LifeFlight, and Medac, among others. This was on top of the banking alterations they discussed the night before. On the following page, there was a breakdown of his anticipated expenses related to his stay in the apartment, along with a projected budget indicating the amount of child support she'd require to sustain her and the girls' current lifestyle. The projections indicated a shortfall of several hundred each month. He also outlined strategies to cut costs, including giving up his frequent visits to Waffle House and Starbucks, a prospect that seemed to amuse her. She then added her own expenses to the list, such as her gym membership, participation in a women's group, and dining out more than once a week. He even included some of the children's expenses, detailing fees for extracurricular activities, uniforms, and other essentials. The potential impact on the children wasn't factored into her divorce plan. On another page, he listed tasks that Darlene would need to take care of, including refueling the car, regular maintenance, arranging for a mechanic or plumber when needed, calling for heating and air conditioning repairs, lawn care, car washing, grocery shopping, and so forth. She had to set aside the notepad. Darn it, why isn't Jeff behaving as he should and giving me what I want? I need to call Miranda before Jeff wakes up. Hello, Miranda, it's Darlene. We have to keep our voices down because Jeff is sleeping nearby. How did it go last night? Miranda's voice conveyed excitement, anticipating a positive update from Darlene. Instead of asking how he could improve to prevent me from divorcing him, he agreed to the divorce and then began listing all the tasks he currently handles that I'd have to take on if we go through with the divorce. Jeff intends to rent an apartment and only take care of the girls on weekends. He insists that we truly separate and behave as if we're divorced to make a more informed decision about whether to proceed with the divorce after 90 days. He doesn't seem genuinely frightened by the prospect of divorce. What should I do? Listen, foolish girl. He's just trying to manipulate you. He's bluffing. There's no way he'll actually sign any papers. It's a shame he feels the need to enumerate all the small things he does to make you feel more dependent on him than he is on you. The bottom line is you control the kids and what happens between your legs. Only these two things will keep him in line. It's all talk on his part. Don't worry, before long you and Robert will be enjoying each other in bed and you'll still have a husband and a home. I hope you're correct and Robert is worth the trouble. Well, Jeff hasn't taken any action yet. I'll remain resolute, at least until I see what his next move is. Thank you, Miranda. He's getting up. I have to go. Hey, Jeff, would you like some coffee? Darlene asked nervously. Her husband shuffled over to the coffee pot and mentioned that drinking coffee late at night wasn't wise. I hardly slept. Why didn't you join me in bed? Well, I went for a walk, but I didn't trust myself. What do you mean, sweetheart? I saw you sleeping undressed and I became quite aroused. You're still the most beautiful woman I know. I'm hesitant. I fear that if we were to make love, it would only be out of pity to alleviate my pain over the divorce proposal. I wasn't sure I could resist. Darling, we're still married. I belong to you and no one else, at least until we separate. Can't we act like husband and wife until then? I'm afraid not. I'm more convinced than ever that separation actions must commence promptly. Though the official split won't start until the 1st of the month, it essentially began on the day you mentioned, I'm unhappy. It'll be difficult for me, but I genuinely want to see you happy, even if I no longer play a significant role in your life. Darlene reassured Jeff that their separation didn't necessarily mean they had to pursue a divorce. She asked him to relax and give her some time to discover herself, expressing confidence that they would remain married and perhaps even strengthen their bond. Jeff expressed doubt in her words and announced his decision to take the day off to handle division-related matters. He mentioned that Billy would oversee maintenance crews during the day and outlined logistical arrangements regarding finances and accounts, emphasizing the need to act promptly. He also reminded Darlene not to be late for work, as he would prepare breakfast for the children and take them to school. Later, as Robert, a charming colleague, came by the office to flirt with Darlene, she felt anxious but agreed to discuss enjoying music together at a later time. Her thoughts shifted from her separation from Jeff to memories of carnal moments with Robert in the elevator. Upon returning home from work, Darlene noticed signs that Jeff had been there during the day. Seeing this, she felt somewhat relieved, emotionally prepared to confront the financial matters he had discussed. It seemed like he was thinking, I have 90 days to explore, we'll remain married, and then I'll try to figure out how to engage in a relationship with Robert without getting caught. Sitting down at the kitchen table, she reviewed her notebook once more. Jeff had added a few more items to the list. However, she also noticed a new list titled Possible Women for Today. It consisted of 2 columns, women who have already expressed interest, and women I would like to know if they are interested. While the columns weren't extensive, the names in the first column startled her. One of them was her sister, Erica. Darlene immediately dialed Erica's number. Hello, Dare, Erica answered. How are you? How dare you attempt to steal my husband? Hey, slow down, girl. What's this about? Jeff made a list of women who told him they wanted to date him, and your name is on it. I'm not sure about the list, but I once mentioned to him after I had a bit too much to drink, that if he ever wisened up and left your foolish, unappreciative self, I'd be interested in taking your place. Wait, what's happening that he's presenting you a list of women who are interested in him? Are you implying there's trouble in paradise? Did you catch him, or did he catch you with someone else? That's beside the point. I simply informed him that I needed some space, some time to myself to explore new relationships. Here, Erica cut her off. Yeah, you're looking for something on the side. Who is it, or are there multiple? No, I haven't been involved with anyone yet. Jeff and I are just going through the 90-day separation, and then we'll decide if we want to remain married or not. All right, Erica accused Darlene of having someone specific in mind and expressed indifference towards it. She questioned Darlene about their impending legal separation and warned that if anyone desired to be carnal with Jeff, there was nothing Darlene could do about it. Erica promised to pursue Jeff herself once Darlene was legally separated, pledging absolute fidelity to him. Darlene defended her decision to separate from Jeff, pointing out it was her initiative despite previously praising him as a husband and provider. Erica criticized Darlene's actions as foolish and naive, given Jeff's qualities as a provider, husband, father, and lover. She urged Darlene to notify her as soon as she was free from the marriage and ended the conversation. After the call, Darlene attempted to settle her nerves, however. It didn't help as she glanced at the list of women again. Among them was Jenny, his secretary, a petite single mother, stunningly beautiful but nearly 20 years younger than Jeff. Yet there she was, topping the list, indicating her interest in dating her husband, perhaps seeking a provider for herself and her child. 2 other women were listed, one of whom was married, as denoted by the M next to her name. The remaining names belonged to women who worked alongside Jeff, some of whom Darlene recognized from their local area. Despite holding a degree in psychology, Jeff had worked as a laborer during college and maintained his affinity for the trade, growing his business to encompass 3 teams. Darlene suspected he was evaluating these women's plumbing skills as well as the state of their HES plumbing. The 3 unnamed women on the list were simply labeled as a waitress at Waffle House, a barista at Starbucks, and a clerk at Walmart. She wondered how many other women found him as appealing as Erica did. She hadn't anticipated him dating while they were apart, but now she pondered if he already had someone else in mind. Jeff entered the house and noticed his wife flipping through a notebook. He had a hunch about the upcoming conversation. "Looks like you wasted no time finding a replacement for me, huh? My own sister, of all people, how could you?" Darlene retorted. "I was merely catching up with your progress and finding a boyfriend." Jeff replied, "What do you mean? I don't have a boyfriend. I just want to explore some new relationships." Darlene clarified, "What about Robert Turner?" Jeff inquired. "How do you know about that? Robert Turner? What's your plan today?" Darlene questioned. "I bumped into Sylvia, your boss's secretary, at Walmart during lunch break. She's a notorious gossip. Don't trust everything she says," Jeff explained. After a pause, Darlene couldn't resist and asked, "What did she say?" "According to Sylvia, you're close friends with one of our new partners, Robert Turner. Apparently, he visits your office often, and you 2 have lunch together every day." I asked Darlene what was going on, considering our company's strict policy against office fraternization, Jeff elaborated. I explained that Robert is an old college friend, and that we often hang out together. "That's why Sylvia thinks Robert might be one of the men you were considering during our separation," Darlene responded. "How far have you taken your research?" Jeff probed. "Robert is just a friend. We've barely done anything, just talked. I think he might be someone I'd like to date. He's always nice to me and compliments my appearance, even when I'm not looking my best," Darlene admitted. "Anything more?" Jeff pressed. Darlene's expression gave away the answer as she recalled the elevator scenes. "Did you do anything that his wife wouldn't like?" Jeff continued. "Wife? He's not married. Who told you that?" Darlene exclaimed. "I found out on his Facebook page," Jeff revealed after some computer searching. "Is this Robert Turner?" Jeff asked. "Yes, it is," Darlene confirmed. "What does his marital status say?" Jeff asked. "It says he's married to Cynthia and has 2 sons," Darlene confessed. "Maybe he's divorced now," she suggested. "The website was updated 3 days ago, and look at what his wife wrote last." "It seems like they're still very much together," Jeff pointed out. "He never told me he was married. I would never do anything to break up a marriage," Darlene insisted. "Seems like you're okay with breaking up our own marriage, though," Jeff retorted. There was a heavy silence as Darlene realized she was cornered and needed time to think. Robert was the primary reason she contemplated ending things, but she couldn't let Jeff catch wind of it. "Well, he was just one of several men I might consider dating." "I can make a list just like you," she deflected. "Oh my God, I just remembered something crucial. If we decide to stay married after the separation, we need to exchange medical reports to ensure we're both free of carnally transmitted diseases," Jeff interjected. "You're being gross right now," Darlene shot back. "It's just a precaution. I wasn't really planning on dating anyone, especially since it's only for 90 days. But if I feel the urge, I can find someone. I'm sure you'd want to feel safe too. It's not just about you. It's about who you're carnal with, who they've been with, and so forth," Darlene stated. Jeff tried to hide his enthusiasm for tightening nuts as Darlene seemed to be changing the subject. He said, "Okay, Dar, I promise to update you on what I did to facilitate the separation process today. I have a lot on my plate, most of which starts on the 1st. Dealing with bank and credit card accounts is a priority right now, so you have easy access to your money. Sorting out the mortgage, utilities, and the like may be handled within the next week or so." Oh, I have some good news regarding finances. Did I mention that my secretary Jenny works as a night manager at the Royal Arms? These apartments are conveniently located, so I inquired about vacancies. They have a 2-bedroom unit available, but we need to act fast. Normally they're quite pricey, but she mentioned that if I became an apartment maintenance specialist, I could get a 50% discount on rent. This means more money for you and the kids. You haven't signed the lease yet, have you? Remember, we have 90 days, and if you play your cards right, you might just return here, Darlene said, considering remarking about his secretary being a gold digger, but concluding it would exacerbate the situation. No, I haven't finalized the lease agreement yet. Though I had to explain why I was apartment hunting, she mentioned they typically don't do month-to-month rentals, but for 90 days, she could likely make an exception. When Jenny learned about the divorce, she expressed interest in me. I was taken aback by the age gap and all that. I had no clue she found me attractive. I politely declined, citing workplace rules against employees and managers having anything beyond a professional relationship. Jenny suggested she could find a job elsewhere if that was the issue. That's why I mentioned it on the list, Jeff explained. Darlene was fuming, but she held back her thoughts, knowing they'd only worsen matters if vocalized. Without waiting for Darlene's response, Jeff went on, "Another piece of news you'll probably appreciate, I've booked 2 tickets for a 10-day Hawaii vacation. I kept it as a surprise for our 20th anniversary." Darlene's demeanor shifted. "Hawaii? Oh, Jeff, you know how much I've always wanted to go there. This is amazing. I can't wait to relax on the beach and swim in the ocean. Thank you, thank you, thank you." However, Jeff's expression didn't match his wife's enthusiasm. "We won't be going to Hawaii. When you mentioned divorce, I realized we might not make it to our 20th anniversary. When I tried to cancel and get a refund, they said it was too late, offering only a 20% refund. After some thought, I realized the trip to Hawaii is more your dream than mine. I thought you might still want to go, so I asked them to change the tickets for you and a guest to be named later. It could be a great start to your new relationship if you can offer your new man an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii. But Jeff, it was with you that I wanted to go to Hawaii. We could postpone the separation. In fact, I'm considering calling off the whole thing now that I've had time to reflect on my life. I'm not as unhappy as I thought. I'm sorry, Dee, I've given this a lot of thought. I don't believe I could be content knowing that the possibility of divorce hangs over us. Even if you retract the divorce now, you can't erase what you expressed wanting, and I can't erase the images in my mind of what you and Robert might have done when you weren't doing anything special. I'll likely proceed with the divorce, regardless of your decision, though I can't fathom life without you, and being only a part-time father to my girls." Jeff then retreated to the guest bedroom upstairs. Darlene was devastated. She knew only one person to turn to, Miranda. She called. "Hello, Darlene, what's wrong?" "Miranda, everything has gone wrong. Jeff found an apartment and his slim secretary is already flirting with him. Even my sister wants to date him. The worst part is he had tickets to Hawaii for our anniversary, and he gave them to me to use, but he won't go. He said I could use them to take my new boyfriend. What do I do now?" "Hey, what's the problem? You and Robert will have a blast in the sun. Fun and amazing lovemaking." "No, I found out Robert is married, and his wife and kids are moving here soon. I can't. I don't want to go to Hawaii with him. I want to go with Jeff." "Wait a minute. I think I just realized what's happening," Miranda interjected. "Wow, Jeff is more cunning than I gave him credit for. He claims he booked the trip ages ago. It was just a ploy to manipulate you into feeling guilty and halting the divorce proceedings. Don't fret. With your attractive figure, you'll find boyfriends as good as, if not better than, Robert in no time, all while maintaining your marriage and family." "Oh my goodness. I never imagined he could be so deceitful. He'll pay for this." "Thank you, Miranda. I was on the verge of giving up. He's going to regret it dearly. Let's chat later." When Jeff descended the stairs, he had a small suitcase with him. "So, you're trying to make it seem like you're already moving out? No worries. Goodbye and good riddance," Darlene said. "Actually, I was just going to take a few things to the apartment to avoid carrying too much at once and startling the girls. Jenny mentioned I could move some stuff in before the 1st since the apartment was empty. Anyhow, your demeanor seems different from earlier. Let me guess, you were consulting your marriage guru. Miranda is a divorce expert, that's all she managed to be. Don't try to provoke me by insulting Miranda. She's on my side. She caught on to your Hawaii ticket scheme. You fabricated that tale just to coerce me into giving up everything. Nice try. I still want a divorce and can't wait to finalize it. There are plenty of guys out there who desire me and are willing to meet my needs." "You're absolutely correct, especially about the attention you'll receive from other guys. I have no doubt you'll have numerous offers once they realize you're available. I've always considered myself incredibly fortunate to have such a stunning woman like you, a fantastic partner in raising our children, and, until recently, a faithful wife and lover. You're mistaken about the Hawaii trip, and I can prove it. Just give Lois Simpson at Flight Right Travel Agency a call. I'll dial her now. Hi Lois, it's Jeff Sinclair again. My wife is on speakerphone, so you can fill her in on the details about the trip. She has a few questions. As expected, Jeff, I'm really sorry you won't be able to go. It seems like you were genuinely looking forward to surprising your wife and enjoying your vacation. What specifics do you need, Mrs. Sinclair? Darlene demanded. Could you please outline exactly what's included in this trip? Certainly. This is our 10-day excursion spanning 2 islands. It covers accommodations at our top-rated hotels, meals, transportation, hula lessons, luau dinners, traditional tiki performances, opportunities for surfing, swimming, and dancing, all set in a romantic atmosphere. Many couples have found it to be a transformative experience for their marriage. When did my husband initially arrange this trip? Darlene was certain this would expose him. Let's check. According to our records, he inquired about it approximately 3 months ago, then finalized his selection for this specific trip 2 months ago, with payment made 2 weeks thereafter. Yesterday, he contacted us to cancel the booking, resulting in a 20% refund. I was surprised when he suggested that you could still go and find another companion. That says a lot about the kind of husband he is. You're quite fortunate. Any other inquiries? We'll need the other person's name for booking the flight tickets. No further questions. I'll get back to you soon with the name, Darlene replied. She tried to anticipate Miranda's response based on this information. After a moment, it clicked. You think you've outsmarted me once more, don't you? You and Lois conspired to fabricate this Hawaii trip story before I even mentioned divorce. Well, I've caught on. She felt proud of her deduction, achieved without Miranda's assistance. Jeff let out a heavy sigh and suggested, You should talk to your parents. Or what do my parents have to do with this? Who do you think will look after the girls while we're away? Fine, let's call them, Darlene responded, caught off guard. No need to rush into it, dear. I'm already dialing, Jeff stated. Hi, Jeff, her mother answered the call, recognizing the caller's number. Darlene, how are the girls? Glad you called. Hi, Mom, Darlene greeted hesitantly. Mom, this is Jeff. We're on speakerphone, Jeff added. Hold on, let me get Dad too, Darlene's mom said, hearing her father's voice in the background. Harold, it's Jeff and Darlene. Pick up, honey. What's going on, guys? Harold joined the conversation. When Darlene remained silent, Jeff spoke up. Darlene knows now, so no need to keep it a secret. Son, we're sorry you can't go. You didn't mention why when you called earlier. I hope it's not health-related. When you called this morning and said we wouldn't babysit the girls for your Hawaii trip, we were disappointed. We were looking forward to having them with us for 10 days, and we felt bad for Darlene that you couldn't go with her. We know how much she wants to go, but she'd rather go with you than anyone else. Have you decided who to take, Darlene? It'll be tough for whoever stays, her father commented. No, Mom, I haven't decided yet. How long ago did Jeff discuss the Hawaii trip with you? I'm not sure, Harold. Or do you remember? It was around New Year's, wasn't it? Almost sure. 2 or 3 months ago, he mentioned it early so we could stock up on snacks. These two can eat anything and never gain weight, her mother said. Jeff, Darlene's mother interjected, concerned. Is everything okay with Darlene? Why are you asking when Jeff talked to us? Did something happen between you two? Oh God, did you break up? Darlene's mother asked. No, Mom, not exactly. We decided we needed some space, some time apart to recharge our marriage, and then maybe reconcile, Darlene clarified. Dar, I'm not going to lie to your parents. They've always been honest with me, Jeff interjected. Mom, Darlene began, I didn't mean to cause alarm. What I meant was that the first step in the divorce process is a 90-day separation. I hope this time will help me find myself, explore new opportunities, and better myself so I can be a better wife and mother. And that's coming from me, Mom, Harold exclaimed. I know liberal lies when I hear them. Darlene, do you have a boyfriend on the side? No, Dad, no, not at all, Darlene denied. Jeff considered speaking up, but opted against it. Harold continued while his wife's sobs echoed in the background. I can't believe you could do something like that. We raised you better. I'm so disappointed. Don't expect us to be polite to your new man, Darlene. We're so sorry, Jeff. At least promise us you'll let us see our grandchildren after the divorce. Amid her sobs, Darlene interrupted before Jeff could respond. Jeff has blown this whole thing out of proportion. I take my words back. No divorce. No separation. I'll talk to you later when everything calms down. Seeing Darlene in tears, Jeff urged, You need to pull yourself together. The girls will be home soon. He grabbed his suitcase and headed toward the door. Where are you going? Didn't you hear? I don't want a divorce. You don't have to go anywhere, she pleaded. You unilaterally stated that you want a divorce without talking to me first. Now you think you can unilaterally declare that we won't get divorced because things aren't going the way you planned? You don't seem to understand that I have a voice. After what I've learned about you over the past week, I'm not sure giving up on divorce is a good idea. I'll take a sleeping bag from the garage and stay in the apartment for the night. Jeff, please don't go. I'm sorry. You said it was fine before I brought up this nonsense about wanting a divorce. Can we just move past it and return to how things were? You claimed you were happy. I was very happy too. But I can't forget how you admitted to being unhappy and planned to have an affair with Robert. Like I said, you've already committed infidelity. Sally mentioned that she could easily draft the divorce papers since they're standard terms. She might even serve them tomorrow. I won't sign them, Darlene retorted sharply. That doesn't matter. All Sally needs to do is ensure you're officially served. She might do it at your workplace to have many witnesses. Perhaps even Robert. I could claim alienation of affection. I could even serve your boss for violating company policy, but that's going too far. I need you to be able to care for the girls after the divorce. I know. I'll speak to Robert's wife. That should suffice for payback. Why are you so harsh? I love you and you love me. Is there anything I can do to make things right? You said divorce would be tough on both of us. Don't you want to avoid this pain? I promise never to bring up this divorce mess again. Please stay and let's work it out, Darlene pleaded tearfully. Jeff remained silent and motionless. Darlene felt she had made an impact. I pledge to be the best wife in the world. I won't look at another man. I've given you nearly 20 years of a strong marriage, 2 wonderful children, and supported your business even when it meant you came home late and dirty. I'm so proud of your success. Everyone makes mistakes. Please give me one more chance. Please, Darlene implored. Finally, Jeff responded, I'll tell you what. I'll go ahead and take my suitcase and sleeping bag to the apartment. I'll ask you to write down a few things. Your words and actions have inflicted more pain on me than you realize. If your responses meet my expectations, I'll contemplate calling off or at least delaying the divorce. I'll return by 7. You might consider sending the kids to their parents or friends so we can speak freely. Yes, thank you. What should I write? Darlene asked eagerly. Firstly, I expect an apology for instigating this entire situation, and I want you to plead with me, not just plead, but beg for my forgiveness. Secondly, instruct Robert to cease contacting you. Any repercussions if he persists? Warn him I can take legal action against him and your company if he fails to comply. Thirdly, enumerate all the reasons why I should consider remaining married to you. Lastly, call Miranda and convey that you never wish to communicate with her again. This is non-negotiable. If I ever hear about Miranda's input again, I will leave immediately. Do you comprehend what I'm requesting if you want us to have a chance at salvaging our marriage? Yes, dear, I believe so. I'll fulfill everything and be prepared by 7. Very well, see you at 7, Jeff said as he grabbed his suitcase and departed. Darlene focused on the final task on the list, mentally rehearsing her words to Miranda. She uttered, listening to you was my worst mistake. Because of you, I nearly lost everything dear to me. Do not contact me via call, text, email, or even think of me. If our paths cross in public, steer clear, or I won't be responsible for my actions. Surprised at her sense of relief after confronting Miranda, Darlene dialed Robert and relayed Jeff's instructions. She recounted his desperate plea to meet one last time at the motel, resorting to insults and accusations of her being inadequate, shutting him down. She warned of involving his wife if he continued causing trouble. The anticipated challenge of listing reasons why Jeff should stay married turned out to be the easiest. Liberated from desiring more than what she had with Jeff, Darlene reflected on the joys they shared. She compiled an entire list, hopeful that it would impress Jeff. Expressing remorse for the divorce ruse, she acknowledged how foolish, self-centered, and presumptuous she was. Never again. As 7 approached, Darlene felt prepared and self-assured. However, when the hour struck and Jeff hadn't returned, a hint of worry crept in. 5 minutes later, he reappeared without his luggage, his expression unchanged since he left earlier. Darlene attempted to remain compassionate and humble as she handed him her responses. Here are my answers. I hope you reconsider. Jeff stared at the list for an extended period while perusing it. Tears welled up in his eyes. Seeing him cry, Darlene also began to weep, interpreting his emotional display as a hopeful sign. Dar, this is really impressive, he uttered. Though hopeful, Darlene's heart fluttered as she rose to embrace him, but he gestured for her to remain seated. Your effort is commendable, but I'm not sure you grasp the extent of the pain you've caused me. I fear I must proceed with the divorce, he explained. Darlene was devastated. It felt as if her heart had been shattered. Collapsing to the floor, she sobbed uncontrollably, her grief plunging her into unfamiliar depths. In her despair, she lamented, "I've ruined my family's life. I'm the worst person alive. I don't deserve to live. How could I have been so foolish?" Jeff knelt before her, whispering, "Now you understand how I felt." As Darlene continued to cry on the floor, Jeff approached the door but paused, glancing back at her. "During our separation, are we allowed to see other people?" Overcome with emotion, Darlene struggled to compose herself enough to respond, her tears hindering her speech. "If dating others is permitted, what are your plans for Friday night? Would you like to have dinner and catch a movie?" Jeff proposed. "You're asking me out on a date?" Darlene exclaimed. "Yes, I believe we've irreversibly changed our old relationship, but perhaps we can start anew," he suggested. With renewed hope, Darlene rushed toward Jeff. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes."
Story 2.
My wife kissed another man on a night out. She's upset it didn't bother me, now I'm divorcing her. We've been together since we were 18. Never had a great sex life after the first year, maybe once or twice a year at most since then, but at the moment it's been going on 3 years. Although it bothers me, I love her, and I love her kids, so I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I know plenty of friends in the same situation. Another bit of context is that I've always been mildly overweight but always fit, as I play a lot of sports. Until about 10 years ago, when I got really ill, and a mixture of meds and comfort eating made me balloon up to nearly 300 lb. Well, 2 years ago, I decided to do something about it. I'm now around 200, which at 6 feet 2 inches is the lightest I've been as an adult. I've actually enjoyed using weights, and for the first time in my life, I have a bit of abs and some muscle. My wife, having always been far hotter, is pretty obviously insecure about the fact that for the first time since we've been together, women are starting to look at me and message me on my baking pages on social media. For the record, I've never even looked at another woman in that way. On to the night in question, my wife went out with some friends, a mix of single and in a relationship. She looked stunning, and I told her so. I even updated my phone home screen to that picture of her. One of the friends she was out with messaged me about 3 months ago, and the gist was she knows I get no sex, my wife doesn't realize how lucky she is, and basically, do I want to hook up? I obviously instantly took a screenshot and sent it to my wife. Around 4 a.m., my wife gets home and she wakes me up as she wants to get in bed. I'm half awake but can tell something is wrong and ask what the matter is. She doesn't say anything for a few seconds, and as I go to grab her hand, she pulls away. I ask if she wants me to get her a drink, and she says no. Then she just blurts it out and says, "I met a guy tonight, and he kissed me." I didn't kiss back at first, then I did. Then for the next half hour, we were dancing and constantly kissing. She kept saying sorry and begging me not to leave her. My honest first reaction was, "So what? It's only kissing and dancing." I didn't say that. I just hugged her and tried to calm her down. An hour or so later, once I got the right words in my head, I said, "I know you feel really guilty, but please don't. I'm not going to leave you and break up our family over some kissing and dancing, and I don't love you any less than I did yesterday. And this isn't something that's going to grow and cause resentment." More or less right on cue, my phone goes off, and it's that friend of hers with a picture and video of what my wife was doing. This set my wife off again, but my feelings still haven't changed, and a month later, that remains the case. In that month since then, my wife has accused me of not loving her because I didn't care. She's accused me of kissing other people, which is why I didn't care, as I was covering up my own indiscretions. She's also accused me of being gay multiple times, which doesn't make sense. She keeps asking me why I haven't initiated anything with her, even though in the past. She's told me she hates being touched and not to try it on with her, which I have respected. She's basically projecting, and it's annoying me as it's putting a strain on us, which she is 100% causing. How do I get through to her that she needs to stop feeling guilty and just move on because I have? It's not a big deal. I was genuinely more annoyed when she broke my baking bowl and tried to blame it on the cat. Edit. Hi all, just wanted to say thank you all so much for taking the time to respond to me. I really do appreciate it, and I'm overwhelmed you all took the time. I'm getting asked a few questions, so I thought I'd address them here. Over the years, we have been to a few different couples counselors and sex therapists, the latest being last September for both. My wife always feels like she's being victimized by them, and we stop going. Nearly all have said they think she is asexual, and 2 even said she is displaying a lot of signs of being a closet lesbian, which I've brought up to her before, and she is adamant she's not. On that note, I've had a lot of messages saying she wants to feel wanted, and for me to be more forward with her. This is not true. In all our sessions, she said she doesn't want me trying it on with her. She doesn't even want me to initiate hugs, and just bringing up sex makes her feel under pressure. She let me and her therapist know that if she ever has sex without her initiating, it will be no more than pity sex. As for people saying I don't love her, I buy her flowers every Friday on the way home from work, I bake her favorite cookies and cupcakes every weekend, I send her voice notes of songs I'm listening to that remind me of her. I tell her I love her every day, I run her a bath every night. This isn't me showing off, this is how I was brought up to show love. For those saying I must have been brought up in an unloving home, people said that if I don't get jealous, I don't love her. If she told me she was having an emotional affair, spending hours on the phone with someone else laughing and joking, snuggling on the sofa eating chocolates and watching TV with someone, etc., I'd be devastated. A dance and a kiss isn't a big deal to me and not even close to divorce. Second edit, sorry for these, it's 7 a.m. here now, the day after I posted this. Been talking to my wife since 6, and I said she's got a week to agree to go back to couples counseling. And she's got to stick it out this time and not just accuse them of taking sides and refuse to go back. She said no. She said they all bully her and make her out to be the bad guy. She said I went back on my word that I forgive her and won't resent her. I said this isn't about the kissing, it's about her reaction since the kiss, and it feels like she's purposely trying to drive me away and make me leave her. She just got up and stormed out of the room. She then got dressed and said she's going out until I go to work. Relevant comments from the community. She's trying to sabotage the relationship and is getting mad that you won't let her. OP replies, that's the conclusion I'm heartbreakingly coming to. This hurts infinitely more than seeing her kiss someone else. Did it ever occur to you that she wants you to be jealous and to fight for her? Blowing it off and being nonchalant about it makes her feel like you don't care about other men hitting on her. All she wants is for you to get jealous about what happened, because if you don't, it's going to escalate from kissing to an affair just to get your attention and reaction. OP replies, well, if she's playing those sorts of games, then I will leave her. That's what teenagers do, not adults in their 40 seconds. She told you because her friends had the evidence that a great guy was being screwed behind his back. You have a roommate, not a wife. OP replies, I think that's the only reason she told me too. She knew she'd been filmed. At the end of the video, she looks at the camera and then darts toward it, and the video ends. OP's update 12 days later, bit of an update to my previous post here. It's been nearly 2 weeks since I made the post, and the short update is that we are getting divorced. I said in my last post I told her I wanted us to go back to couples counseling and sex therapy. She said no to both, as we went before, and she felt bullied. She said it's sex therapy that unless she initiates touching, not just sex, any touching, like hugs or hand-holding, it will be against her will and forced pity affection. The sex therapist said that's very unreasonable, and that's why she felt bullied there. I tried to ask her a few questions too. Are you a lesbian or at least bi? Don't be stupid. Are you asexual? I'm not a teenager with a stupid label. What did he have? Nothing, I just wanted to do it. Why don't you ever want to do that with me? I don't know. What can I do to make you want to do that with me? Don't know. Do you want me to take the initiative and try it on with you more? F no. I'll tell you when I want it, don't guess. She refused the therapy and gave me no straight answers. She has also said I've gone back on my word about not letting the kiss split us up, because now it is. I said it's not the kiss, it's your behavior since then that has caused me to want divorce. She said since it's my decision to divorce and it's all my fault, then I should be the one to tell the kids. And she will have no part of it. That was hard. As soon as they were told, my wife left for her sister's, and in the 3 days since, I haven't heard anything from her. I've tried speaking to her about the kids as they miss her, but she reads my messages and ignores me. A lot of people asked about the friend and why they still talk after she tried it on with me. How I understand it is my wife tried to get the friend group to cut the friend out, but they all pretty much refused, and so my wife just chose to ignore her in group settings. On the night in question, the friend approached my wife and told her if she didn't tell me, she would send me the video. So my wife didn't tell me because she felt guilty, but because she was forced. I've also spoken to a couple of other friends in the group and asked what's been going on. I'm not privy to. Apparently, my wife was texting her friend's boyfriend a couple of years ago. My wife has also been boasting about how she has me under the thumb, and she gets away with giving me nothing, and I'm too scared to ask. The friend apparently saw me out shopping one day and decided I was now more effable, and thought she'd try and exact some revenge on my wife, so she didn't really want me. I was just a pawn in this weird friend group, one of many internal beefs with each other, which I found out about in the last few days. Basically, they all seem to hate each other and mess with each other's partners. I'll be honest now, and I feel incredibly guilty about it, but when she left, my body and soul seemed to take a massive sigh of relief. It was like a black cloud that was dripping eggshells on the floor for me to constantly avoid is gone. I feel terrible for feeling this way, but I feel like my 6 feet 2 inches height now, rather than a browbeaten 3 feet 0 inches who is scared to even say anything for fear of being told I'm wrong, insulted, or ridiculed. It's like the blinkers have been taken off. I think he meant blinders. I spent the day today baking with my kids, eating Easter eggs and watching cartoons, and I haven't stopped smiling all day. I haven't winced or broken out in a sweat worrying if I'm about to be told off about being too noisy, watching the wrong thing on TV, or if there's a wrapper on the floor, etc. Thank you to everyone for your support on my last post. I appreciate you all. TLDR, we are divorcing now. First comment, she sounds like a really horrible human being. Onwards and upwards, my brother. OP reply, she's always been a bit cold, but the last few months she's really stepped it up. Now there are a lot of things that have happened over the years that I'm seeing in a different light. Another comment, you sound like a good person who just wanted to save your marriage. Glad you now realize no woman is worth being treated like you've been treated. It's going to be a rough time for a while, but you're going to come out stronger and never date or marry cold basic women again. OP reply, it is rough, and I do feel like a failure for not being enough for her. But at the same time, I genuinely feel 2 feet taller and 100 pounds lighter since she left. It's a really weird feeling. I now know I'd rather live alone under a bridge than in a household like that. Another person says, you didn't fail her, you failed yourself by believing all this toxic, abusive crap she was feeding you. That's understandable. Abuse creeps up on you until it's under your skin. It sounds like she had you convinced you could do nothing right. You deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and honesty. These things cost absolutely nothing. They're baseline standards for human interaction, at least if you're dealing with decent people. OP responds, that's exactly how it was. I was scared to even offer an opinion on something, and I still am now. My kids asked yesterday what film I wanted to watch, and I found myself scared to give an answer, thinking whatever I chose would be rejected and I'd be ridiculed. A community member adds, you didn't go back on your word, friend. Her actions after the fact and lack thereof is the reason. OP responds, yep, I'm still not bothered about the kiss. Another user comments, she doesn't want to take responsibility and is trying to manipulate you into being the bad guy. You want to improve the situation and improve yourself from outside help. She wants the status quo to remain and is blaming the medical professionals for making her confront the way she treats you. Covert narcissists, look it up so you don't fall into that trap again. It may suck now, but your sanity should come back to you. You've been living in her mind games for a long time. OP responds, she is 100% making me the bad guy. I'm not on social media, but keep hearing about posts saying things like, you give your life to someone only for them to drop you when the halo slips a little bit. A commenter advises, dude, look up covert narcissistic. She caused all the problems, you tried to fix them, but it was never enough or correct for her. OP replies, that's what I've been thinking about the last few days, that everything wrong in her life has been traced back to me and it is my fault. From big things like I don't earn enough money for her to live in the house she wants, to little things like she knocks her glass over and it's my fault as I talked to her while she was watching something. One user gives a final warning, don't ignore this behavior, it never goes well. Clean your name, people listen to gossip more than they'd like to admit. Keep all of these screenshots, it will help during the divorce. If she sends anything too personal or pushes the line too much, make sure you send her an email telling her you do not want your information to be released publicly. Then she can't play dumb. OP replies, there was one where she implied I cheated. It was a picture about how cheating ruins relationships, and then her status with it was something like, so true. But I'm willing to forgive and forget. My friend commented and said, want to delete this or shall I post the video? I really hate this sort of crap, it makes me cringe. Another comment, if the kids are old enough, tell them she cheated. OP responds, they are too young for that. I just told them that mommy and daddy have decided it's best we don't live together anymore, and it's something a lot of grown-ups do, but it's not the kids' fault. And they are still loved and cherished by both of us. Post the video proof. I've got that video, along with all the screenshots of her sexting her friends' boyfriends. There are also some screenshots of a WhatsApp group chat where she's been posting pics for strangers to comment on. It's blatantly her, as she has a tattoo under her boob that's unique to her. There are also other videos and pics of nights out, which her friend group sent me. Some commenters say to keep the records. One says, UK courts probably won't care as much about the cheating as they will about the abandonment. Another says, yeah, agreed, the courts don't care. It's more for my own sake, in case she tries to twist it on me and say I left her for no reason, claiming she did nothing wrong. I'm keeping a record of her not answering the phone to me or my eldest son, and how long it's been since she left, emphasizing that she left of her own accord and has chosen not to come back. One commenter advises, don't take her back, and the OP responds, I'll never take her back. I know a lot of people called me spineless in my last post, but I'm one of those people who, once I make a decision, I stick to it. Finally, another commenter says, update us when she realizes the grass isn't greener. The OP closes out by saying, she's been out nearly every night since she went to her sister's. I genuinely hope she does find some nice green grass and be happy. Your wife's pulling out all the stops in the blame game, huh? From refusing therapy to blaming you for the split. But hey, at least now you've got a load off your shoulders. That sigh of relief you felt when she packed her bags? Peace is priceless. And let's not forget the juicy details about her little friend group sexting scandals, secret tattoos, and more internal beef than a butcher shop. But amidst all the chaos, there's a silver lining, your newfound freedom. No more eggshell dodging, no more walking on thin ice, just you, your kids, and a whole lot of Easter egg eating. Not only that, but you're taking care of yourself, you're a healthier individual, and you're putting yourself first. You're miles ahead from where you once were, OP. Keep going. What do you make of this? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for joining us today.
Story 3.
Hey there. I never imagined I'd reach out to strangers on the internet for advice, but here I am. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only partners. I used to think our relationship was special because of that, but now it seems that was just my perspective. A while back, my wife started a new job. Initially, she had a hard time fitting in because she's always been reserved. With some encouragement from me, she made friends with a group of girls. Initially, I was happy about it, but then she started going out for drinks and parties with them. I got worried about her change in behavior and tried talking to her about it, but I didn't want to restrict her. This started affecting our relationship in the bedroom. My wife wasn't one to initiate closeness, and as she continued going out, she either became too tired or wasn't in the mood. At some point, her company got a new manager whom she and her friends liked. She began mentioning him, even pointing out how he handled non-work-related problems. I questioned her about him, and she brushed off my concerns. She even asked if I regretted not having more experience with women, but I said no because she was all I needed. I thought I saw a moment of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. She brought up open marriages to spice up our relationship, which surprised me. My wife was never like that, to be honest. I initially refused, questioning if it had to do with the new manager, but she denied it, saying she felt like she missed out but didn't want to lose me. I warned her it was risky, then reluctantly and naively agreed. We set some rules, mainly not to sleep with another person in our home. For a year, my wife went on dates, had one-night stands, and somehow ended up in a relationship with that manager. I, on the other hand, had a few dates but avoided one-night stands because it felt wrong to me. My wife would ask if I was okay, but I didn't really want to change her behavior. At some point, I felt the love I had for her fading, and it was damaging me inside. I went on a date with an amazing woman from South Korea, and we hit it off. The conversation was easy, and she had a quick wit and a smile that was unforgettable. This led to more dates, and eventually, we became faithful. I never experienced closeness like that before, and I didn't know a woman could be so giving and make someone feel so desirable. At first, my wife thought it was cute, but as months passed, she questioned my relationship with my new lover. I reminded her that this was her idea, and even though she was in a relationship with the manager, I was concerned about it. She stayed silent, looking like she wanted to say something but held back. She started coming home early, surprising me with dinner and cleaning the house extra. She also came to my workplace to drop off lunch and initiated closeness in the bedroom. If it weren't for her suggestion of an open marriage, I would have been thrilled about all this. I reluctantly gave in to her attempts at closeness, and when I did, it was just to get it over with. Something in me towards my wife died, and I could see she felt it too. I asked what brought about this change in her, and the response was that she wanted to show me love and happiness. I burst out laughing unintentionally. I asked about her friends, the manager lover, or the one-night stands. She didn't respond that day and went to bed in tears. The next day, I came home to find her waiting for me. She admitted the open marriage was a horrible mistake, expressing regret and wanting to focus on us again. I told her to be honest and tell me what inspired all this in the first place. Turns out, her group of friends planted the idea because of their numerous close exploits. When the manager came around, he surprisingly supported that lifestyle and encouraged my wife to live freely. It seems their emotional connection turned physical only after they opened up the marriage. She compared it to being like a drunk driver speeding down the road, exhilarating and intoxicating. However, the consequences of this choice have become too much for her to handle. She now realizes that she didn't need a comparison. What they had was truly unique and special. Unfortunately, she feels like she destroyed our marriage and any chance of a future together. When I told her I might never see her as my wife again, it made her break down in front of me. I simply held her in silence as she cried until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. She has since quit her job and severed ties with all her friends and her manager. She even expressed her willingness to spend the rest of her life making it up to me, working hard to be seen as a wife again. However, I haven't cut off contact with my lover. Frankly, my lover makes me feel like a man who can take on the world, something my wife hasn't done in a while. The truth is, I don't know what to do in this situation. I'd love to recapture that special feeling, but my lover essentially saved me when I was at my lowest. Please help me. I forgot to mention we have our first marriage counseling session in a couple of hours. I'm uncertain how it will go. I'll post an update on our therapy session as it definitely needs it, but I'll answer some questions. First, my lover is not married, but she is in an open marriage. Second, my intention for this marriage is still unclear because despite my love for my wife, I struggle with trusting her. Yet I can't let go completely because of our years together. I agreed to counseling to figure out if I can reach a clear resolution and get off the indecisive train. Third, I initially didn't ask for her phone because I didn't want to see an actual image of my wife with another man. The mental images and thoughts were bad enough, and to see the actual picture would have shattered me even more. Also, this morning, as I got out of the shower, I saw my mother holding my phone, silently shaking as she read a message I had received. I took it from her without saying anything. The message was from my lover saying, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your t-shirt last night because I miss going to bed and waking up in your arms. I miss greeting the new day with a kiss from you." I think this upset my wife because she has been following me for the past 2 hours, even during my jog. I met my lover on an evening when my wife was on one of her dates. I was coming from a bookstore and my lover was being strained by a short, beefy man yelling at her. When he grabbed her arm and violently turned her around, I unconsciously stepped in. I practice judo, but I'm not exceptional. I was able to restrain him and accidentally dislocate his wrist. It turns out she got him fired for aggravation and he didn't take it well. Afterwards, she insisted on buying me coffee as a thank you gesture. And I agreed. Regarding her reaction to the open marriage, she initially hesitated, strongly against being a homewrecker. However, after learning the full extent of my wife's actions from me, she decided to take a risk. Update. The therapist was friendly and experienced. She seemed impartial and genuinely eager to help. Even though it was our first session, my wife used it as a chance to share everything. She confessed that her group of friends made her question if she missed out because she committed to her first boyfriend and had no other experiences. She never had the same adventures as some of these supposedly amazing women. Keep in mind, some are divorced, but none are married. The therapist highlighted that this could hurt a marriage due to differences in mindset. My wife agreed and added that after the new manager started approaching, some friends encouraged her to explore, saying it was a chance for her to discover herself. She obviously felt guilty, she says. So she never did anything physical until a divorced friend suggested an open marriage as a loophole, saying some couples come out stronger. Regrettably, I agreed, and her so-called adventure began. It was thrilling but lacked real substance, unlike what we built over the years. She started questioning her reasons for doing this. She said she could see the hurt in my eyes, but told herself it was an adventure. She thought she had the chance for an amazing experience, so the gravity of it all never occurred until she noticed a change in me. Initially, she assumed I'd accept her situation and be okay with it because I went on dates. But everything changed when my lover became a constant in my adventures. Apparently, I started smiling for no reason, and my eyes lit up with texts or calls. She felt a pit in her stomach and got many panic attacks for no reason. Seeking advice from friends, they said it was a normal reaction for me to have during the adventure. But when the same divorced friend who suggested this said his lover makes him happy, the reality finally dawned on her. The very real possibility that another woman, not his wife, gave him joy almost made her pass out. She realized how ridiculous this all was and begged them to help her win me back. But they just told her if she couldn't deal with it, why did she open her marriage in the first place? She knew then and there that these people were toxic and a threat to our marriage and the life we built. Hence, she's been on a mission to win them back by any means necessary. I, on the other hand, didn't share much, but I did let the counselor know about the situation on my side with my lover still in the picture, to which the counselor said no resolution could ever be reached with my lover still in the picture, and suggested we book another appointment after tomorrow. The counselor did say it was unusual for someone to stay with their first this long, and gave the impression that any storm can be weathered. Update. It's been like a scene from Jerry Springer. I've moved into my brother's apartment at an incredibly low cost. I've uncovered some troubling details about my wife's actions and disturbing things about her manager. In our second counseling session, I asked questions from fellow Redditors, including if she was certain nothing physical occurred before we opened the marriage. She avoided eye contact, pleading with me not to make her say it, fearing it would ruin us. After some pushing, she admitted it wasn't physical, but that they engaged in self-touching in front of each other. This guy convinced her it wasn't technically cheating, just appreciating each other's beauty. I was shocked, and she started shaking and hyperventilating, even crying snot, apologizing profusely. Even the counselor was taken aback at this point. My wife knelt, hugging my legs, expressing deep remorse. I asked what really changed her view of him. She explained his behavior changed when she distanced herself from the group. One evening, she overheard him speaking disrespectfully about her to a male colleague. He boasted about how easy it was to get her, calling her proof that you can't trust quiet ones. When asked if he liked her, he dismissed it as a distraction, emphasizing he had no intention of leaving his fiancée. He pitied me but said, "You snooze, you lose." Realizing she was just an object to him, coupled with betraying me for a thrill, made her suicidal. She left her workplace, vomited, and begged for forgiveness. I asked if she loved him, and when she admitted it, she claimed she never stopped loving me. She suggested starting anew, just the two of us, but I explained it wouldn't be fair to my lover and I needed time away. She had a meltdown, sobbing and saying incoherent things, clinging to me as if I might vanish. It took time for both me and the counselor to calm her. The counselor suggested time apart might help us heal. Now, I wish I could end the update with just this, but as we got home, I began to pack and my wife got a video call from her laptop. It was one of her former friends in tears. After my wife resigned, this friend and the manager began their own affair. But apparently, she had a pregnancy scare, causing him to turn into Dr. Jekyll. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend she saw a future with, and she only had a fling out of curiosity. Funny how that seems to be a trend. Her boyfriend found out from an email between them discussing the potential pregnancy, but the manager accused her of babysitting him. Of course, he left her, and she contacted my wife, thinking she had saved our marriage and seeking advice. I just turned and left, and I've been staying in the apartment ever since. Update. A lot has occurred as I make decisions about the future. Quite a few significant things happened. The friend who had a pregnancy scare was indeed pregnant, but the stress of losing her boyfriend and facing humiliation from the affair led to a ruin. She reacted strongly, exposing the manager to upper management and his fiancée. I found his fiancée on Facebook. She appears to be the epitome of a charming small-town girl, working as a special needs teacher, a homebody, and very family-focused. My immediate thought was questioning why he'd mess around with other women when he has someone like her at home. Honestly, why men like him end up with women like her is one of life's greatest mysteries. The friend reached out to me, seeking my side of the story for evidence against him, and I agreed to meet in person. Seeing her face, I could tell she was emotionally shattered, with dark circles and red eyes indicating sleepless nights. She thanked me for meeting and apologized for her involvement in my wife's ordeal. It turns out she and my wife spoke, and that's when she learned about my moving out. Without blaming others, she took responsibility, explaining that losing a child and the love of her life changed her to the core. She can barely look in the mirror without feeling disgust, haunted by her ex's face when he found out. This meeting seemed like a form of self-punishment for her self-hatred. She informed me that the manager, due to workplace fraternization and his influential position, might be fired and blacklisted. The same consequences might apply to her, and she accepted it. After hearing my side, she left, and I apologized again. Needing to retrieve some belongings, I went to the old place when I thought my wife wasn't home. Unfortunately, she was there, surrounded by our wedding photos, visibly upset. Seeing me, she tried to hug me and offer lunch, but I declined, explaining that I needed a few things before leaving. She showed me a recent message from her former manager, berating her. Apparently, my wife helped her friend expose him to relevant parties, causing his anger. She got the idea from chump ladies and marriage builders, thinking that exposing the secret would weaken its power and give us a chance. I appreciated her courage, but clarified that it didn't change anything between us. I also mentioned stopping marriage counseling for individual counseling. This made her cry, and she understood. Despite expecting elation or rage, I felt numb towards her. Recognizing this abnormality, I decided to address it in individual counseling, not marriage counseling. I also consulted a divorce lawyer on my brother's recommendation for precaution. Currently, I'm not eager to fight for the marriage, and my wife senses it. Her attempt at closeness ended with my refusal, leading to a loud confrontation. I shook my head, explaining that if she still couldn't understand after all that's happened, our marriage's direction is clear. This is my current stance, at least for now. I enjoyed the Radisson because of its large, roomy lobby, reminiscent of old movie hotels. Standing aside with my sons, Bradley and Terry, we waited for my wife Lauren to arrive for a Wednesday afternoon date. We had been planning this day for weeks, eager to see how it would unfold. Lauren and I were approaching our silver wedding anniversary next week. We married early and had our boys early, both attending Temple University on scholarships. Despite living in Redding, we rarely ventured to downtown Philadelphia. I hadn't experienced a Radisson before, working in the legal department of an accounting firm in Redding. For the past 10 years, I had a regular weekly meeting with a retirement care contractor in Harrisburg, never canceled or rescheduled. That's likely why Lauren chose Wednesdays for her weekly Radisson trips. A 2-hour drive from Redding to downtown Philadelphia in terrible traffic, suggesting its importance to her. My suspicions arose about 2 months ago, noticing little things. The company's investigator, on retainer, willingly took on surveillance work between his regular jobs. It was costly, but I didn't mind. He quickly discovered Lauren was traveling to Philadelphia on Wednesday mornings, meeting a family friend, Kyle Standish, at the Radisson Hotel. Lauren always waited for Kyle in the gift shop. When he arrived, he got a room, walked through the lobby to the payphone, placed an envelope under the payphone, and entered the elevator, always on the 8th floor. Lauren would emerge from the gift shop, take the envelope with the room key, and follow him to his floor. They spent about 3 hours there and then parted ways. Kyle used to work for our company, and we socialized with him and his wife Beth at various company events. A few months ago, Bradley and Terry spotted Kyle at a job fair, and about 2 weeks ago, they reluctantly revealed the situation when Lauren was away. "Dad, if you knew what was happening, why didn't you do anything?" "Terry, I only found out recently. I'm unsure of what I want. I love your mother, and thinking about life without her is difficult. I wish I had never known. Now that I do, I can't ignore it. Any suggestions?" Bradley suggested a radical solution, but I plan on calling Beth to gather more information. It's heartening to see my sons being supportive. They love their mother. 2 days later, I met Beth Standish, who suspected something was wrong but wasn't entirely sure. Beth had caught Kyle in similar situations before, and he promised to change. Armed with enough information about his infidelity, she was ready to file for divorce. She asked me to refrain from taking action while she prepared the papers. This brings us back to today. Lauren entered the hotel lobby right on schedule and walked into the gift shop. She looked beautiful, but a little nervous. It seemed like she was putting in extra effort for her weekly date, which stung a bit. "Hi guys, are you waiting for me?" Beth Standish quietly approached me. "Lauren just showed up and is waiting in the gift shop. If all goes according to plan, Kyle should be here soon. Lauren browsed magazines, keeping her eyes on the lobby, searching for her lover. Soon, Kyle walked past the gift shop and approached the counter. I observed Lauren smiling at his arrival. A few minutes later, Kyle exited from behind the counter, stopped at the payphone, and entered the elevator. As soon as the elevator door closed, Terry entered the gift shop. He smiled and greeted his mother with open arms. Lauren seemed worried, and with his arm around her waist, Terry diverted her gaze from the lobby. Beth quickly retrieved the keycard Kyle had hidden and entered the elevator. Kyle was predictable. He always showered before engaging in faithful activities. Beth planned to wait in the hallway until she was sure he had started. Bradley and I approached Terry and Lauren slowly. "What a great surprise. Nice to meet you here, Lauren. Come join me and the boys for lunch." "John, why are you here? I thought you were supposed to be in Harrisburg. The meeting got canceled today, so I thought I'd have lunch with the boys. I tried calling you, but you weren't home. I can see why. Why are you here?" Lauren seemed upset. "I'm meeting Marcia Phillips here for lunch. You remember her, right, John? We went to elementary school together." She didn't notice the boys smiling at each other as she came up with this lame excuse. "No problem, Lauren. We'll make a reservation for 5, and she can join us." Lauren reluctantly walked with us to the restaurant. She seemed to have no choice. Before sitting down, she pulled out her cell phone. "I have to call Marcia and let her know things have changed. Put the phone away, honey. The hall isn't that big. I don't think she'll have any trouble finding us." I didn't want my wife calling Kyle while Beth was handling things. Lauren seemed a little nervous as we sat there. The boys were acting a bit subservient, but she didn't notice. Lauren placed her phone on the table next to the silverware, usually kept in her purse on the floor near her chair. After the waiter took our drink orders, we all sat in silence looking at the menu. I frowned slightly when I saw them smirking at each other. Are we going to wait for Marcia, Lauren, or are we going to let her order after she arrives? Go ahead and order right now. Marcia was a little dubious about making it in time for lunch. She might not show up at all. I figured if she didn't show up, I could still do a little shopping. Poor Lauren was piling one lie on top of another, trying to save face. I felt sorry for her, but I knew she deserved it. The waiter brought our drinks and took our order. Lauren only ordered a fruit salad. Not 15 minutes later, Beth came to the table. She was carrying all of Kyle's clothes and his shoes. "Hey, Beth, how'd it go?" "It was really good. Thank you." John, my loving husband, was in the shower as we expected, and didn't even notice I was there. I left the divorce papers on the dresser for him, and decided at the last minute to pick up his clothes. Lauren looked very scared. The blush was gone from her face, and her eyes started to cloud over. She looked at me, then at Beth, not knowing what to do. "Here's the key, Lauren. Thanks for lending it to me. I won't be needing it anymore." Beth carefully placed the keycard next to Lauren's phone. Lauren stared at it with her mouth open. Her cell phone rang. She picked it up and looked at the number. Without answering the call, she turned the phone off and put it back. "Here you go, boys. The Corvette is yours for the rest of the week. It's in my name, so don't worry. Thanks for your help, guys, but I gotta run. Have a nice meal." Lauren looked at me like she was begging for help. I didn't offer anything. She didn't even look at the boys. When the waiter brought the food, she apologized and went to the ladies' room. The boys and I had already eaten, and Lauren never returned to the table. I had Terry check the restrooms and sent Bradley to the room Kyle had taken. When Lauren left, she left her keycard, cell phone, and purse on the table. 10 minutes later, they both returned, to no avail. Bradley said that the hotel had provided Kyle with a tracksuit while they were trying to get him home. Terry checked the ladies' rooms in the hotel, restaurant, and lobby and found nothing. I asked the restaurant manager to arrange for us to get help from hotel security. There was no indication that anything illegal or criminal had occurred. The security people tried to be as helpful as possible, but the only thing they could find was a security camera that showed Lauren going into the kitchen, not the ladies' room. The other cameras showed nothing. As a precaution, they called the Philadelphia police. Lauren could not be reported missing, but we could file an incident report for future reference if necessary. We waited a few more hours and then decided to go home in case she was there. She left her purse on the table with her credit cards, driver's license, and money. Lauren wasn't home. Epilogue. It's been 2 years since our lunch at Radisson. Terry is now a lieutenant in the Air Force. Bradley is in graduate school in California. Beth and Kyle got divorced. We never saw Lauren again or heard from her. I filed a missing persons report with the Philadelphia police after the required waiting period, but they found nothing. Legally, I'm still married. At some point, I will have to apply to change that status. In the meantime, I live in a big house alone. All of Lauren's clothes and other things are still here, just like she left them. I'm trying to figure out if lunch at Radisson was a good idea or a bad idea. I can't decide.
Story 4.
I remember the early days of my life, growing up surrounded by the rugged beauty of Colorado's mountains. My father, a stern but loving man, worked as a foreman at a local mining company, while my mother, a quiet and thoughtful woman, managed our home and kept us boys in line. My brothers and I spent countless summers exploring the woods, playing by the streams, and learning the skills that would one day define our paths. They, with their natural inclination toward structure and discipline, chose careers in the military. I, on the other hand, felt a pull toward the earth itself, which led me down the winding path of geology. It was in college where I met Susan, a woman who seemed as fascinated by human behavior as I was by the formations beneath our feet. She was a sociology major with an insatiable curiosity about the hidden workings of communities. We connected during a campus symposium on interdisciplinary studies, and from that day forward, our paths intertwined. I was captivated not just by her intellect, but by the mystery that seemed to shroud her past, a subject she skillfully dodged with gentle deflections and an enigmatic smile. Despite this, our bond grew strong, and before long we were married, ready to face the world with our shared ambitions and separate dreams. Years passed as I pursued my career in the oil industry, a field both challenging and rewarding. Susan, meanwhile, followed her academic passion, diving into graduate studies that took her deeper into the realms of sociology and psychology. Her dedication to research was impressive, yet it came with a shadow of detachment that only deepened as she moved closer to completing her doctoral work. I often reassured myself that this distance was just part of the journey, a phase we'd push through together. Little did I know how profoundly this research, which had always been a point of pride, would eventually shape our lives in unforeseen and painful ways. Sitting in the dim light of our living room, a gnawing discomfort settled deep within me. This wasn't the first time I'd felt so isolated, though each moment seemed more piercing than the last. I couldn't pinpoint the root of my unease, but it was intricately tied to the months she spent immersed in her field study, far away in Utah. My wife, Susan, had recently returned from 2 arduous months of fieldwork dedicated to her sociology PhD. Now she was locked in an endless cycle of research and writing, pouring every waking hour into her thesis, while I found myself grappling with the growing chasm that had formed between us. I resented her silence and her refusal to engage in conversations that mattered. Despite my efforts, Susan remained aloof and unyielding to my attempts at rekindling our connection. You might wonder why I'm worried. Let me explain, so you can see why. Her background was a mystery. Raised by her mother, who never spoke of Susan's father, she didn't share much about her past. I respected her silence, but now it felt significant. I have 2 brothers in the military and parents in Colorado, whom we visit occasionally. I had just returned from 9 weeks in West Africa for oil exploration, while Susan had been in Utah for her research. We left home the same day and reunited recently. When I returned, she greeted me coldly, saying, "Welcome back to the States." She quickly mentioned needing to focus on her thesis, and had even put a lock on the den door to avoid interruptions. This felt unnecessary, but I agreed to respect her space. She hadn't informed me of her extended stay. When I questioned her, she claimed she couldn't contact me due to the isolated nature of the community. Yet, she had her laptop and phone card, so her excuse didn't add up. I'd tried to reach her via email, but she never responded, and the university couldn't help either. I was worried, I told her, but she dismissed it, saying, "You were away." She shared almost nothing about her time in Utah. I knew she'd stayed with a local family and had somehow gained the trust of a secretive community. Her project focused on a splinter group from the Mormon Church, but she wouldn't elaborate on how she managed to extend her stay. She insisted her work was crucial and complex, but kept details to herself. "I'll tell you everything someday after my thesis is done," she said, offering no comfort. The secrecy was new and unsettling. For the first time in our marriage, I felt she was hiding something significant. The first thing I noticed when I returned was Susan's change in appearance. She used to dress like any 26-year-old, stylish but not overly revealing. She wore skirts just above the knee, jeans and pantsuits, always adding makeup and perfume. Now, her clothes were ultra-conservative, ankle-length dresses buttoned to the neck in plain colors like gray and blue. She even styled her hair into a bun instead of letting it flow naturally. She stopped using makeup and perfume, and her new look was drab and unappealing. When I mentioned how much I disliked her new style, she brushed it off. "It helps me stay in the mindset for my thesis work," she said, ignoring my frustration. Nights were equally distant. She wore plain cotton nightgowns and rejected any closeness. "I can't risk my emotions interfering with my work," she said. I grew tired of her rejection and often turned my back to avoid more frustration. Our relationship felt hollow, but Susan only focused on her work. She claimed she needed to avoid anything that could disrupt her memory of the research. Her thesis professor had her attention, but I, her husband, felt invisible. Susan had come back with a stomach issue, keeping crackers by the bed for morning nausea. Despite my suggestions, she refused to see a doctor, saying she felt better after a few weeks. When I mentioned a colleague's concern about hepatitis, she dismissed it. "I'm fine now," she said. Her involvement in household tasks dwindled, citing her thesis deadline as the reason. I reminded her that she had 2 more years to complete it, but she insisted on finishing now to return to teaching by fall. "I need my degree ready," she said. This sudden urgency was straining our marriage. We had always discussed decisions together, but now she avoided deep conversations, closeness, and even basic planning. When I offered to help with finding a teaching position, she snapped, "I don't need your interference." I felt excluded, my anxiety growing as Susan isolated herself. Stress even started affecting my health, and medication offered little relief. The only stable part of my life was my job as a geologist. Our home was filled with tension and superficial conversations. I turned to playing my cello for solace, but the loneliness was suffocating. One evening, I tried asking about her living conditions in Utah. She reacted sharply. "Ethan, stop asking me about this. I'll tell you when the thesis is done," she said, exasperated. Our exchanges ended in frustration, and she retreated to her den, locking the door behind her. Our life together was falling apart piece by piece. My patience was running thin, and my anger became more obvious. Yet, I had to accept not having a real partner or answers about her life. Days turned into months, and I couldn't understand what was happening. Doubts about our marriage crept in, unsettling me. "Do you have concerns like mine?" I once asked her. "Changes in my methodology required many adjustments," she'd say. "I found new information that needed discussing with my committee, complicating everything." "Susan, can't you tell me what this new information is? How did you get it?" I pleaded. "I'm worried you'll get too emotional if I tell you. It would negatively affect my recording of my feelings," she replied curtly. I muttered to myself, already disliking what little I knew about the polygamous community she studied. How could sharing details worsen my feelings when I already resented their influence on her? "I'd only react badly if you were involved in their practices," I said, trying to gauge her reaction. She avoided answering, saying, "I used unconventional methods to get my information." I felt her secrecy was more stressful than just being honest. "It will all be clear when the time is right," she insisted. 5 months without closeness passed. Before, we had a healthy, loving bed life. Now, even light affection was denied. I couldn't understand how avoiding closeness was related to her research. If it was, then what exactly had her research involved? I asked her directly, "Did you do anything that might damage our marriage or violate our promises?" She snapped, "I won't discuss this until my dissertation is done." Realizing I had a serious marital problem, I voiced my anger. "You've been back for months, and you can't reassure me of your fidelity." Her defensive body language made her silence even more unsettling. Our relationship, once full of trust, was unraveling. I missed her warmth, but she remained distant, focusing solely on her thesis. I reached a breaking point. "Susan, you're tearing apart our trust. Our marriage is at risk, and it's on you," I shouted. Frustrated, I left to cool off, wondering if I'd have to plan a future without her. Determined, I decided to investigate on my own. Her changes, conservative dress, no makeup, no perfume, and locking herself away, felt foreign and wrong. Our once loving relationship was eroding, replaced by resentment and anxiety. From that point, she showed no real interest in me. Nights passed without affection. I stopped asking questions, and she kept the den locked when working. Her explanation, "I need to avoid interference." "It feels like you're shutting me out," I said. "It's not important," she dismissed. But the openness we once promised was gone. Our marriage was unrecognizable. Susan's behavior and secrecy were getting under my skin. She now kept her computer locked with a password. When I asked her about it, she snapped, saying, "You have your own computer. Stay off mine." Her defensiveness only raised my suspicions. She claimed I might accidentally delete her work, but I pointed out she should be backing up her files regularly. She turned away, ending the conversation. The secrecy between us created a growing sense of distrust. I told her this, but she dismissed it. Our communication was almost non-existent, which worried me more than anything else. I emphasized how much she had changed since starting her research project, but her response was always the same. She was busy completing her dissertation. "I need you now, Susan. Not later," I said, frustrated. She just asked me to hold on, explaining how complex her research had become. Despite promising her thesis was almost done, she gave no timeline and then would lock herself back in the den. My job as a geologist kept me busy commuting and working from home, but I shared my concerns with my boss. He suggested I speak with Susan's thesis advisor. That seemed like a solid plan, so I set up an appointment. Meanwhile, I checked our bank and credit card statements and found no unusual charges from her time in Utah, except the bus fare. I wondered if she had a university account for expenses, which I planned to confirm. I contacted a tech expert at work for help accessing Susan's computer. He offered to assist me in person, and we planned for him to come by when Susan would be at a thesis meeting the following week. Meeting Professor Young, Susan's advisor, I learned she did have a university account for expenses, but he wasn't sure if she had used it. He confirmed her research took unexpected turns that required major revisions, but wouldn't provide details, suggesting Susan and I needed a candid discussion. He emphasized the importance of forgiveness in marriage, deepening my anxiety. He also mentioned that while her ultra-conservative dress was noted, it wasn't significant. I asked about her living arrangements, knowing she couldn't commute due to the lack of motels nearby. He didn't have specifics, but suggested I discuss it with Susan. His attempts to reassure me fell flat. My concerns were only growing. Professor Young said Susan would present her findings and methodology to her committee the following week, including details about her living arrangements. He mentioned that while she could share any personal details with me, he couldn't discuss them without her consent. He found it unusual that Susan had asked him not to talk to me about those arrangements, but he reassured me that secrecy in research was common, though her level of secrecy from me was unusual. As I thanked him and prepared to leave, he encouraged me to consider pursuing a PhD, learning of my strong academic background. I declined, knowing the stress it had caused my marriage. We parted amicably, and the secretary handed me Susan's account records, emphasizing they were confidential. Driving home, I felt more anxious than ever. My concerns grew, but there was still no concrete evidence of infidelity, only suspicion. I secured the file without mentioning my meeting to Susan. This was the first time I kept important information from her, adding to my guilt. Our conversation that evening was light, but I expressed frustration about how her behavior was straining our marriage. She claimed she was under immense pressure and promised to share everything after her thesis was approved. Tuesday arrived, and Susan dressed in her usual conservative outfit, even for her thesis defense. I urged her to dress more professionally, but she brushed it off, saying appearances didn't matter in her field. After she left, I met with my tech friend, who accessed and copied all her computer files, emails, and deleted data, ensuring no traces were left. That evening, Susan returned in high spirits, saying her thesis was accepted for publication and all academic requirements were completed. Despite her excitement, when I tried to embrace her, she pulled away, saying she couldn't yet. I was stunned and demanded answers, frustrated with her continued emotional distance. She asked for another week to settle the grant's financials before talking, but I exploded in anger. "Why a week? You could do this online in minutes." After a heated argument, I agreed to the delay, but warned her that any further excuses would end in divorce. I stormed out to clear my head, knowing I was at my limit. This extra week gave me time to review her files and accounts. I was determined to uncover the truth, whatever it took. That night was rough. I struggled to sleep and kept waking Susan with my tossing. When I woke early the next morning, my arm rested on her stomach. As I moved my hand, I felt a small, firm bump. Something was different. My mind raced, and a horrifying realization hit me. She was pregnant, and it couldn't be my child. She hadn't needed her birth control pills, which I now remembered hadn't been around since she returned. Fueled by rage, I shook her awake. She screamed, startled. I demanded the truth. shouting that her secrecy was over and she needed to confess. I stormed out, slammed the door, and tried to calm myself with coffee. My anger was uncontrollable. I yelled for her to come out, telling her this was her last chance before everything ended. Susan came out in a nightgown, looking scared. I asked if she knew she was pregnant. She nodded, explaining she found out right after she returned and didn't tell me because she couldn't face it. She needed to finish her thesis quickly, knowing she'd have to confront me about the pregnancy and our marriage. I accused her of lying and betraying me. My anger surged and I spat on the table, expressing my disgust. She sat in silence, ashamed. Finally, she admitted, "I think the pregnancy is from an attack. Henry, the head of the family, forced me into a series of attacks and later coerced submission. I couldn't escape. His wives kept watch, and his brother, the sheriff, would have brought me back." My anger lessened as the reality of her attacks sank in, but I pressed her for more answers. "Why did you keep up with this secrecy, the refusal of closeness, and your changed behavior? There has to be more." She wept, asking to tell me everything in the order she had planned. I agreed reluctantly, needing to know the full story to understand what had happened to us. Susan's eyes pleaded with me, and I softened. "You need to tell me everything now, not over weeks. All of it today, understood?" "Yes, everything today, I promise," she said. I warned her that I'd been digging, speaking to her professor, and copying her computer files. "You have one chance to be honest," I said, setting up a tape recorder and disconnecting the phones to avoid interruptions. I took both our cell phones, turning them off. Susan began, "Let me tell you where I came from. You never pushed for details, and I never felt ready to share. My mother was the fourth wife in a polygamous family in southern Utah. When I was 11, she fled with me, leaving everything behind. We hid in a boxcar and escaped to Colorado, where Mom rebuilt our life, never dating or remarrying. You know the rest." We took a break and went for a walk, holding hands for the first time in months. When we returned to the table, Susan resumed, "My childhood greatly influenced my academic pursuits. Visiting that town meant going back to my roots. I wasn't entirely unknown. People recognized me, but suspicion was evident. Earning trust was essential." She continued, "Henry, the head of the family, was tall, powerful, and authoritative. He imposed strict rules. I had to remove my wedding ring, which he kept. He destroyed my computer and took my money, as women were forbidden to have such possessions. I realized I was more of a captive than a guest. I agreed to his conditions to stay and conduct my research. Losing my computer plunged me into isolation when I returned, as I had to recreate my notes and experiences from memory. It was exhausting and intensified my anxiety, though it was only one aspect of my overall stress. Her story was far from over, and I braced myself for more revelations. Susan resumed, her voice controlled, almost as if she were reading from a prepared script. "I agreed to adhere to all the community's rules and not disrupt their way of life. This was necessary for my research. You may wonder why Henry, an influential leader, would allow an outsider like me into his home. It was because of our familial connection, though not by blood. Henry, who was 20 years older than me, assumed leadership of the family after my father passed away. When I arrived, I was assigned a bed in the attic with the other wives, while Henry had his own room downstairs. I was expected to work as the wives did, dress like them, and follow their rules. The first wife monitored my activities, provided necessities, and assigned me tasks." Susan paused for a moment, then continued. "When my suitcase was searched, the first wife discovered my birth control pills and threw them out, declaring them against God's will. Deodorant, lipstick, Tylenol, and other items were confiscated as well. I accepted this, convincing myself that I wouldn't need the pills while away from you. I hoped that my compliance would help me build trust and advance my research." She shifted slightly in her seat. "By the second week, Henry announced during a private family meeting that I would become his fourth wife, a decision over which I had no control. My protests were in vain. He overpowered me and forced my compliance. The other wives stood by, unable to help due to their own fear. Henry threatened me, making it clear that disobedience was not an option. The next morning he told the children I was now a mother figure and added me to the household duties. At night, he enforced his dominance and control. Over time, my initial resistance waned, and I adjusted to the role. To my dismay, I even began to accept and, at times, appreciate the dynamic. It was a stark contrast to what we shared. This duality made the experience even more unsettling and conflicted." Susan's eyes focused on a distant point as she spoke. "After a month, I was allowed to join community visits and was introduced as Henry's fourth wife, I learned about their rigid social structure and began creating lesson plans for homeschooling, which had to be approved by the male-only town council. This access provided deep insights into their way of life and advanced my research significantly. Her voice softened. Being accepted as a submissive wife enabled me to gather more information than I ever expected. Henry would often stress that men should treat their wives as he did. While this experience was invaluable for my study, it came at a significant personal cost. She paused, taking a break. I sat in shock, feeling detached from her story. It felt like I was listening to a stranger recounting events from a foreign place, not my wife sharing painful memories. I felt detached, listening as if Susan were a stranger telling an intriguing story. I controlled my anger as she continued, skipping questions for now. She returned with a notebook, explaining, "I wrote notes to guide this talk. First, know that I've always loved you, though it has changed. I need to tell you how I left Henry's family." She recounted, Rebecca, Henry's 12-year-old daughter, had her birthday, but she was unusually withdrawn after talking to her mother and friends. That night, while Henry was with his first wife, I saw my chance. I retrieved my hidden credit card from my old shoes, put on my coat, and left quietly. I left a note for Henry saying I needed to publish my research. I knew I had to be far away by dawn, so I walked the familiar road my mother and I had fled 15 years ago. After several miles, a passing car gave me a ride to the bus station. I dug up my hidden money and headed home to record my findings. Susan paused, then said, "I needed isolation to recall my experiences accurately. That's why I kept my distance from you. Now comes the harder part." I listened as Susan admitted, "I've been torn between two lives. Life with Henry, though it began as something forced, became enjoyable over time. I adapted to being his submissive fourth wife and even grew to like it. The routine became comfortable, and I found certain aspects of it fulfilling. Our bed life was wild and different from ours, which I came to miss. I know that's hard for you to hear, but it's the truth. I'm now at a crossroads. I need to decide whether to stay with you or go back to Henry, who said he would take me back if I return with money after completing my PhD. I need time to choose which life to pursue, the tender one I have with you or the structured, communal living with him. I'm asking for your patience while I make this choice." Susan's eyes narrowed as she added, "I've told my thesis committee everything, even about my involvement in the dom-sub relationship. They know that I'm pregnant, but to them, it's purely academic. I'm set to receive my PhD, and that's what matters. Now, I'm ready to answer any questions you have, and I hope you'll remain civil, as I have been today." I paused, working to control my anger. The information I had found on her computer and financial records didn't matter anymore. The recording I made was enough. I stopped it, took a deep breath, and locked eyes with her, speaking calmly despite the fury simmering beneath the surface. "You overlooked something important in your plans. Decisions have consequences, and you left me out of yours. You broke your vows to me, to our family, and to God. You took another man as a lover and are now carrying his child. Your choices have destroyed our marriage." I continued, "Staying with me is not an option. Tomorrow I'll be seeing a divorce lawyer. Your future choices are now limited. Go back to Henry, live as a single mother like your mother did, or move on alone. I will not support you or the child either financially or emotionally. You've been living independently for months and now it's official. Our relationship is over." Susan's expression hardened as she responded, "I have my grant money and a book advance. I don't need your help. I can manage on my own." I met her gaze and replied, "You used me, Susan. My income supported your betrayal, disguised as research. You married me as a means to an end. You've shattered my trust and broken my heart, and it seems you don't even care. Your declaration of love was the biggest lie told by the only woman I ever loved." She shook her head. "Ethan, I've always loved you. I wanted you to stay faithful and prove your love by not complaining." "You wanted my love while betraying me?" I shouted. "You wanted me to feel more pain when you left? You and Henry deserve each other. You've become like him, a manipulative monster." I was furious that Susan shared everything with her academic peers, but kept me in the dark. It confirmed I was never truly important to her. "Susan," I said, my anger mixed with hurt, "are you really going back to him? Do you know what your penance will be? He'll likely beat you to make an example of you and you won't escape again. If he eliminates you, they'll call it natural causes. You'd risk your life and your unborn child's. I want no part of that, or you." I didn't know if what I said was true. I just wanted to scare her. "You told me he was powerful and controlling. Be careful. He'll have no guilt damaging you or his child. I couldn't understand how someone as intelligent as Susan could choose that life. Was she mentally ill? The room darkened as I felt the weight of defeat. This morning, I was just angry. Now I'm tired and done. I'm numb. But at least I have closure. From now on, I only care about how I'll rebuild my life without you. You no longer matter to me. Emotionally drained, I felt broken and exhausted. My love had been betrayed, and I wanted her out of my life. I walked out to clear my mind, determined that she would face the consequences of her choices. But I wasn't done with Henry. I planned to deal with him. I slept on the couch and took family leave the next morning. Susan had made coffee. "Enjoy it while you can," I said. "You'll have none when you're back with him. You might get the dominant life you want, but this house will be mine. I made the payments, and I won't let you take it with your $50,000. It's going on the market today." I had plans for Henry, but kept them to myself. "Prepare to find another place. I'm moving to the corporate apartment today and taking the rest of my things soon. We'll only talk through lawyers now." I handed her a paper with my lawyer's contact and returned her cell phone. I packed in silence, took the tapes for any divorce issues, and left without saying goodbye. She was just an object to me now. The dark months were behind me. I headed to the bank, a realtor, and a divorce lawyer, then to my parents' house for something stored in the attic. I had plans to make and justice to serve. Freedom had a high price, and Henry would pay for crossing me. The next day was filled with tasks. I closed my bank accounts and moved the funds to new accounts in the city. I canceled our credit card and applied for a new one. I scheduled a meeting with a divorce lawyer and arranged for time off work. My boss, aware of my situation, offered help, but all I needed was my paycheck redirected and some leave. I instructed the office to give Susan my new number if she called. By day's end, I was exhausted. The following day, I returned to the house. Susan was gone, so I collected the tape recorder, tapes, books, clothes, tools, pictures, and my cello. I contacted the realtor with my new information, but learned Susan's signature was needed to list the house. I left her a note with my new phone number, stating I wanted to talk. Not about the divorce, but about Henry. Gathering intel on him became my priority. I then met with the divorce lawyer, presenting the tapes and computer files. I insisted on a 50-50th split, including Susan's book advance and any future profits. I refused alimony or child support and wanted her to relinquish my last name. After paying the initial legal fees, I felt the cost of freedom was worth it. That evening, Susan called to talk, and we arranged to meet at a diner the next day. I slept well for the first time in months, feeling focused and determined. Susan was already a part of my past. The following morning, I packed for visits to my parents and her mother after seeing Susan. At the diner, Susan wore a modern maternity dress with light makeup and looked healthier. A bruise marked her cheek, but she seemed more like her old self. I greeted her and noted her return to modern attire. "Ethan," she began, "I want to apologize for my words the other day." "Susan," I responded, "it wasn't how you said it, but what you did. We're heading for divorce, and I'm sure you'll agree to the terms. This will free you to return to Henry or live as a single mother, and it frees me of any responsibility. I can't forgive the infidelity, though I understand there were circumstances. You didn't fight back, and that's something I struggle to reconcile. But I came here for information, not to revisit your intimate details. I need to know your daily life there, Henry's work, and the location of the community. Leave the rest out." The waitress served us, and we ate in silence until Susan spoke. "Ethan, I plan to return to Henry in the next few days to discuss the terms of going back. You made me worry that he might hurt me, but I need to find out for myself. I also need to see if our marriage is truly beyond saving. My heart is still torn between you and Henry." "Susan," I said, "our marriage is over. Your divided loyalty shattered mine. The fact that you're even considering another man seals it. Maybe one day you'll understand the pain you've caused. Infidelity isn't just physical. I hope you never face what I've felt. I had your loyalty and you sacrificed it for a degree in excitement. Remember, you vowed to be true in front of everyone, including God. I, Ethan Allen, am not part of your future. This discussion isn't about us. It's about your life there, your routines, and who you interacted with. Any talk of our relationship goes through my lawyer." She pursed her lips. "You don't have to be so harsh. The world already has enough hate. Let's move on to what you want to know." Susan detailed their daily schedules, the roles of the wives and children, and Henry's routines. I kept my intentions hidden, not wanting Henry to sense any threat. His arrogance and dominance wouldn't let him imagine an outsider targeting him. I learned Henry was deeply religious and superstitious, believing in angels and visions. He was proud and had frequent, even multiple physical encounters with his wives each day. Susan mentioned she enjoyed trying to keep up with him, a remark clearly meant to provoke and humiliate me. I stayed silent. Henry was a respected town leader, known for dominating his family and wives, admired by other men for his assertiveness. He had no patience for less dominant men and allowed no interference in his life. To me, he was a control freak. I briefly wondered what he thought of me, but dismissed it. He's nothing but trouble, I thought. His pride would lead to a fall, and I looked forward to seeing it happen. I told Susan goodbye without a handshake and wished her luck with Henry. I had a 6-hour drive ahead and planned to stay overnight. My first stop was Susan's mother's house, an hour away. Although we weren't especially close, she greeted me warmly. We sat at the kitchen table, and I broke the news. "Susan is pregnant," I said. She smiled and congratulated me, not knowing the full story. I then explained everything that had happened over the past 6 months. Shocked, she said, "I had no idea." She only knew Susan was on a research project, but not its nature or location. She was stunned and tearful when I finished. "I can't believe she would go back to that place," she said, shaking her head. To her, Susan's return was like reliving a painful escape. "We fled for a reason, Ethan. Why would she choose this?" she said, tears streaming. Her pain mirrored my own, and we hugged, sharing the sorrow of losing the same person. We cried together, finding solace in shared grief. The embrace lasted as the sun set, shadows wrapping around us. Finally, exhausted, we parted. "You should stay the night," she said. I accepted, grateful for the comfort. After breakfast and coffee, I continued my drive to my parents' home. "I'll stay in touch," I promised her. She was beautiful, inside and out, and I realized how much Susan had been like her mother, until Henry. My anger toward him grew stronger. While crossing the Colorado-Utah state line, I called my parents. No answer at home, so I tried Dad's cell. "Hey, son," he answered. "Hi, Dad. Where are you? I'm coming over." "We're at your brother's. Join us. It's been too long." I decided to extend my trip to visit my brother and his wife. Before heading there, I checked into a motel. My brother, recently back from Afghanistan as an infantry company commander, greeted me warmly. "Ethan, great to see you," he said, hugging me. After family greetings and hugs, I said, "Can we all sit for a bit? I need some family time." Mom, concerned, asked, "Is everything okay?" "It's serious," I replied. "Let's order some food. It's a long story." We ordered pizza and settled in. I began, "Susan and I are divorcing." Mom's eyes welled up. "Oh, Ethan," she whispered. Dad's face was tense. "Is there no way to work it out?" I shook my head and explained Susan's research, her changed behavior, the pregnancy, and our strained relationship. Silence followed, broken by Mom's quiet sobs. Dad held her, eyes glistening. My brother, tense, paced before saying, "Ethan, let's go for a walk." He took my hand and led me out. We called to say we'd return in an hour. In the car, he spoke firmly. "You're in a battle now, one you didn't choose. Listen to me." "What do you mean?" I asked. "There are rules to winning. Know your enemy, his strengths and weaknesses. Use your strengths against him. Choose your timing and strike decisively. Keep plans secret and act fast. Minimize collateral damage." He looked at me seriously. "Plan well and rely only on yourself." I nodded. "I will." "Good. Keep this between us. Now, let's get back," he said, turning the car around. The next morning after breakfast, Mom and Dad headed home, and I followed, needing to retrieve something hidden in their attic. Spending a few days in my old room brought strange comfort. Mom started to recover emotionally, and Dad and I had long talks about my future, though I kept my true plans private. When it was time to move on, Dad said, "We'll be back soon," as they left for Walmart. I went to the attic, found what I needed, and loaded it into my SUV. The next day, I set out, not home, but to my apartment. My boss had been pushing for me to join another expedition, and without Susan, it felt easier to commit. "I'll be away for 2 months in the equatorial Atlantic," I informed my parents. "Be safe, son," Mom said, eyes full of worry. "I will," I assured her. With 3 months of unused leave, I returned to Utah, storing the tool I had packed and picking up furniture from my former house to place in storage. I studied satellite maps of Henry's town and the surrounding area, meticulously planning. I wanted to confront Henry, teach him a lesson, not liquidate him immediately. A headshot would be too quick. He needed to suffer and be humiliated, with no evidence tracing back to me. I wanted him to know it was Susan's husband who had done it. I also planned justice for Susan. I found a tough lawyer through my boss and instructed him to threaten the university with a lawsuit over condoning her unethical research. I wanted to draw the Board of Trustees' attention. The university responded quickly to the $20 million lawsuit threat, stating Susan's degree hadn't been finalized yet. I demanded that Susan's research be rejected entirely and that the decision be irreversible. There would be no compromise. Within 2 weeks, my lawyer received a copy of the Board of Trustees' unanimous resolution. It directed the university president to amend the Department of Social Sciences findings, reprimand those who approved Susan's research, and deny her degree. Additionally, the board included a stipulation barring her from using any of her research for academic purposes. They even informed the publisher that the university's name could not be linked to her book and froze her research grant account. I was satisfied. Weeks later, I learned they couldn't reach Susan to inform her of the decision. The university contacted my lawyer for her contact details. I provided her divorce lawyer's information, her mother's address, and Henry's address. Susan wasn't at our former home, and I wondered about her whereabouts. Despite my anger, I was concerned for her and the unborn child's safety. I planned another part of my strategy carefully. A message from God for Henry, styled like the Declaration of Independence with scripture quotes to intimidate him. I printed it on high-quality linen paper and placed the pages in a formal album, ensuring no fingerprints remained. Knowing Henry's superstitions, I was confident this would unnerve him and make him accept it as divine will. I felt proud of my plan, following my brother's advice to use strengths against weaknesses. I then shifted focus to my planned trips, including a visit to Henry, followed by continuing to Africa. My plan was to appear and disappear like an avenging angel, executing my strategy with precision. For success, I studied and practiced in total secrecy, aided by the internet for private research. I meticulously studied the maps and pinpointed Henry's farmland, knowing what crops he grew and when he worked the land. With access to high-resolution satellite images, far better than those available publicly, I used my expertise as a geologist to interpret topography with precision. I could see field details down to the depth of tractor tire tracks and knew Henry's preferred resting spot under a solitary tree near a ridge. The ridge, just 8 feet high, was perfect for concealment, with an access road leading to a county road a couple of miles away. The setup was ideal. I had chosen my battlefield. Weeks of intense planning and research followed, including studies in human anatomy and surgical techniques. I learned that removing both testicles would drastically reduce a man's sexual drive, while removing only one would allow enough testosterone for sexual desire, but without satisfaction. My plan was for Henry to retain his sexual energy, but live with unfulfilled frustration. He took my wife. I would take his ability for pleasure. The concept of justice, an eye for an eye, resonated with me. Though I liked my plan, the risk of getting caught and facing prison kept me focused and precise. I made multiple trips to various stores, buying supplies piece by piece. From an online theatrical supply store, I ordered makeup and a full gray beard. Oversized shoes came from a thrift shop. My preparation was meticulous. One morning, my lawyer interrupted my planning. Susan has signed the divorce papers and isn't contesting them, he informed me. I didn't even have to appear in court. The papers were filed, starting the mandatory 60-day waiting period. My lawyer informed hers about the university's decision, but he already knew and had told Susan. She had apparently lost it. She'd completely unraveled upon hearing the news. She had lost her cherished degree. Her research had been discredited, and now she was a single pregnant woman about to have a child out of wedlock. I spoke to her mother, who told me Susan was devastated. She's been falling apart since then, her mother said with a heavy sigh. Did you have a hand in this? I did, I admitted. Tell Susan I pushed the university's decision as payback for her infidelity and 5 months of a marriage without closeness, I added. I hate that this is hurting you too. There's always collateral damage. I genuinely regretted Susan's mother being caught in the aftermath, but it was Susan who set these events in motion. Our house went up for sale and sold quickly. We split the equity evenly as outlined in the divorce papers. Susan didn't want to stay there, and I didn't care where she went. She might stay with her mother, but that was no concern of mine. The strangest part of it all was that I had lost my interest in Zex. My energy was entirely absorbed by my project. I wondered if this was how Susan felt while she worked on her thesis. I hoped my desires would return, but wasn't worried. Susan had been my only partner, and now I didn't want anyone, not even her. During this time, I continued to visit the office regularly and worked with my boss on pre-trip preparations. The Eastern Atlantic oil field survey wasn't finished, and my expertise was needed in Africa soon. This would serve as my perfect alibi, should I need one. I had to let my tech-savvy friend in on my plan. This worried me, but it was necessary. I explained everything, and he laughed until tears rolled down his face. "Let's get on with it," he said, still laughing. Using updated photos and his FBI contacts, he obtained blank, authentic U.S. passports and realistic certificates. From these, he made fake driver's licenses and passports. One passport had my photo with his name and vice versa. This way, we each had 2 passports, one real and one swapped. We also created fake driver's licenses. With my supplies, I went to Central Utah for target practice with the tool I'd brought from Africa. My accuracy came back quickly. It was like riding a bike, just needing practice. My plan was falling into place. I spent time with my friend coordinating our international travel. We were set to meet in South Africa. The arrangements fell into place without a hitch. I packed my SUV and drove to Colorado, where I rented a storage unit to store the vehicle. Using my fake Colorado ID, I rented an old car and paid cash. From that point on, I wore gloves. I bought 4 used tires and had them fitted to the rental car, paying in cash to leave no record. I purchased a prepaid phone with my fake ID and called my friend, who had also bought a disposable phone. Our calls would be hard to trace if it came to that. I was officially on vacation, so no one questioned my movements. My friend was ready to play his part in creating the alibi. When Henry faced his reckoning, I'd be in Africa. Timing was critical. I loaded my car with supplies and double-checked everything. The tool, ammunition, surgical tools, camouflage, food, water, documents, money, and passports. I confirmed with my friend, who was eager and ready. My company had booked my flight to Africa for the 10th, but I planned to leave Colorado on the 12th using my friend's identity. He would fly to New York and then South Africa on the 10th, using the passport with my name and his face. "Keep all your airport receipts," I reminded him. "I will," he replied. He would return to the U.S. on his real passport after we met. I'd use the fake passport for the first leg and my real one for continuing to Angola. He would take my luggage, traveling light himself. On the 10th, my friend boarded his flight and called to confirm. My alibi was set. A rush of satisfaction hit me. My target was within reach. Justice was on its way to southern Utah. Wearing gloves, I drove to the location and changed into my disguise. Old coveralls, a red long-sleeved shirt, an unremarkable hat, a full fake beard, and shoes with the outer rear of one heel filed down. I put in brown contact lenses. I drove through the town, making sure I was seen. I might have glimpsed Susan, but I couldn't be sure. I hoped it was her. I wanted her to see that justice was being served. I left without speaking to anyone. That night I set up at my pre-chosen spot, 20 yards from Henry's favorite spot under the lone tree. I checked everything, using desert camouflage for cover and verifying my supplies. The dart tool, built for tranquilizing African wildlife, was set, calibrated for a 300-pound animal. I knew Henry weighed around 280. As expected, Henry came to work in the field and by noon rested under the tree. I aimed and fired. The dart hit his gluteus maximus. He jumped and tried to brush it off, but it was too late. I stepped out from my tent, now wearing a white robe and no beard. I wanted Henry to see my face clearly. In 20 seconds, he would be unconscious. "Henry," I called as I walked toward him. "God has heard the cries of Ethan Allen, Susan's rightful husband. You have sinned. I am the avenging angel sent to deliver God's judgment." Henry's eyes widened in terror as he tried to speak but couldn't. He fell to his knees, succumbing to the tranquilizer. I moved in close so my face would be the last thing he saw before he blacked out. His eyes glazed over and he collapsed. I was alone with Henry. The moment I had waited for was finally here. Henry tried to stand but collapsed to his knees, eyes wide with fear. He tried to speak but couldn't. I moved close, making sure my face was right in front of his so he would clearly see me and remember this moment as the last thing before everything changed. His eyes began to glaze over, and within seconds, he was unconscious. No one had seen or heard anything. The quiet around us was undisturbed. I wasn't a violent man, but Henry lay unconscious as his painful ordeal began. Henry was mine. I stood over him triumphant. If I had given him a lethal dose and he died, that would have been fine, but it wasn't my goal. I moved quickly, descending on him like a spider on its prey. I unsnapped his coveralls and pulled them down to his ankles. There was no time to remove his boots. I pulled down his plain white underpants, exposing him completely. We were under the tree, out of sight from the road or any nearby homes. I bent his knees outward to position him, making his private parts fully accessible. With precision, I wrapped a tight ligature around the base of his organ. pulling the loose skin back to ensure full control. I wanted him to heal, but without the weapon he had used to damage others. With my sharp number 15 surgical blade, I made the cut, slicing through until only less than half an inch remained. The ligature prevented significant bleeding. I placed the severed organ on his chest, leaving it there momentarily as I continued my work. I quickly poured a 10% silver chloride solution over the stump as an astringent. Time was crucial. Working swiftly, I tied another ligature around his testicles, securing it tightly. With a quick slice through the skin of the scrotum, I exposed the left testicle and pinched it out, just as I had done with young pigs on the farm in Colorado when I was a boy. I tied a clean cotton string around the testicle in triple knots, securing it with another layer for extra hold. I used the knife to separate it from its attachments, then poured the astringent solution over the base, trimming the string short. The scrotum naturally came together with only slight assistance. Henry would live the rest of his life without his organ and with only one testicle. I was satisfied with my work. I placed the severed organ in a plastic bag filled with formalin to preserve it. I then removed the ligatures, ensuring there was minimal bleeding, just as planned. I packed my supplies into another plastic bag. To make my message clear, I tied his testicle around his neck. I considered putting it in his mouth, but decided against it. He could choke or aspirate, and I didn't want him dead yet. I wanted him to live and face his new reality without his manhood or the testosterone-driven urges it fueled. I wondered what Susan would think. The thought made me chuckle. This was justice, served with precision and care. I didn't wait for Henry to wake up and react. I didn't need to. Delaying gratification is a sign of maturity, and I prided myself on being mature. I gathered everything from my makeshift station, smoothing the disturbed dirt. For the final touch, I left a written note between his legs, placing the single testicle on top of it as if it were being served on the white plastic sheet. I was certain news of this act would spread quickly through town, but it would reach me indirectly. I would know nothing of any chaos in the Utah desert. I packed everything into 2 large black trash bags. I put on my coveralls and fake beard. I made sure my size 13 footprints were evident before leaving. I did a final check to ensure nothing was left behind. Everything was in order. If there was an investigation, I wanted the evidence to suggest a large, slightly lame man. I wanted the avenging angel to bear the face of Ethan Allen. With an exaggerated limp, I crossed the quarter-mile field to the old rental car parked on the back road. I loaded everything into the trunk, scanned the area for witnesses, and confirmed that my supplies were secure. No one was around. I drove away, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The drive back to Colorado was peaceful and uninterrupted. The mission was complete. When I got back, I destroyed all evidence. My worn clothing, the tool, and the beard were soaked in a mix of water and kerosene, then burned and buried in the desert. The car's original tires were put back on, and I returned it to the rental agency. The stolen Colorado license plate was buried, and the 4 old tires were sold by a bearded man wearing gloves in eastern Utah. From there, I took a taxi to the airport and boarded a flight to South Africa with my fake passport and ID. My SUV stayed in storage, untouched. During the flight, I reflected on the message I had left for Henry. It was written in 17th century English, matching the language of the King James Version scriptures he cherished. It read, Page 1, Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Page 2, Thou hast sinned. The devil sent his messenger to thee, and thou did listen to him instead of me, God. Page 3, Thou shalt test the spirits to see if they are true. Thou did not test that spirit, and thus thou were led astray to lust after Ethan Allen's wife. Page 4, Thou had carnal knowledge, which I forbade. Page 5, I have heard the cries for justice from my servant Ethan Allen. Page 6, Vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord of hosts. Page 7, If thine eye offends thee, pluck it out. It is better to be blind than to suffer the pain of end of life in hell. Page 8, My avenging angel has saved thee from eternal damnation by removing thy offending part. Accept thy judgment from thy God, lest I return in anger and pluck thine eyes out, so thou shalt not sin by lusting again. I slept soundly during the flight, the weight of my mission now behind me. Occasionally, I felt for my backpack where my trophy was securely kept. It was part of Henry, a reminder of this act of justice. The thought didn't disturb me. It brought a sense of peace. Upon arriving in South Africa, I met my friend, exchanged greetings, and handed him a generous bonus in gratitude. He returned to the U.S., while I continued to Angola as planned. We disposed of our cell phones in Africa, leaving no trace that could lead back to us. Henry's organ was a significant trophy, symbolizing the act. My work at sea kept me busy for the next 2 months, letting the events in Utah fade to distant rumors. When I returned to the States, I reached out to Susan's mother and others under the pretense of catching up. Susan had come back home, but she was different. She confessed that Henry had grown more violent after losing his manhood. She feared for her safety, while the other wives felt trapped, unable to see a way out. Susan had urged them to join her in leaving, but they had declined. My brothers were relieved when I shared Susan's story. They were glad justice had been served, though I neither confirmed nor denied my role. I attended the funeral of an old friend who had died from an accidental mix of booze and anxiety pills. We had partied hard, and I hadn't known he had started taking anxiety medication. The idea of eliminating Henry dissipated. Seeing him live powerless was far more satisfying than the silence end would bring. And I wasn't a violent man. Henry never pressed charges, accepting his fate as divine punishment for coveting another man's wife. Susan left him and moved back near her mother, who helped raise her child. Both became teachers and found some peace. Susan never finished her PhD. I thought of reconnecting with her, but couldn't bring myself to raise Henry's child. She never remarried, following a life path similar to her mother's. On what would have been our 10th anniversary, Susan received a package containing a preserved, shriveled human phallus with no return address. I thought it appropriate to return the trophy to the woman who once admired it. I no longer had use for it. My life was full, with love, a wife, and 3 children. The past had no place in it. In war, there are no true victors. Some lose more than others. I lost Susan. Henry lost his manhood and his wife. Susan lost her PhD, and in the end it was just Henry and me, bound by a tale of justice and retribution that left us all forever changed.